Councilor Chadwick, is that somewhere that you've been?
It is. That lake behind me is called Lake Ann. It's located on the northern end of the Pacific Coast Trail up near Winthrop, Washington.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on May 18th, the second evening of our Budget Committee meetings. Before I turn the meeting over to the chair to start the meeting, I just want to clarify something for the record. We changed our meeting schedule for these Budget Committee meetings, and the City of McMinnville, one of our values is accountability, and we believe that healthy civil discourse is fostered through responsive, clear, accurate, and useful information. And with that, I just want to clarify that we are moving our decision-making into June because our decisions about this budget are related to a ballot measure that while votes have been cast, that election process is not yet complete. And we, as a city, are government, and therefore we value process, and so we cannot complete one process before the other process has been completed. And therefore, we will be coming back for decision-making on the hearing on, the decision-making on the budget on June 16th. So I just wanted to clarify that, and additionally, to thank the Board of Commissioners for putting our ballot measure on the ballot so we could move this fire district forward. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor, and I will go ahead and call the Budget Committee meeting to order. And if the city recorder could take a roll.
Committee Member Watney.
Present.
Councillor Chenoweth.
Present on Zoom.
Committee Member Ernst.
Here.
Councillor Geary.
Here.
Committee Member Harmon Ferry. Councillor Minke.
Here.
Committee Member Maxfield.
Here.
Councillor Payne.
Here.
Committee Member Mason.
Here.
Councillor Peralta.
Here.
Committee Member Cunningham.
Here.
Council President Garvin.
I understand that
Here on Zoom.
he is here. Oh, good.
Mayor Drapkin.
Here.
And Chair Hart.
Here. And I should note that Committee Member Harmon Ferry has a family wedding that is happening this weekend, and circumstances demand her presence for that event. So congratulations to her and her family. This is night 2 of the Budget Committee process. Last night we had the formal presentation of the 2023-2024 budget by our budget officer. We had further discussions, presentations by heads of various departments of the city, and looks like we have some more department heads here ready to proceed. Before we get to that, I would just ask the city manager or the finance director if they have any comments before we proceed, and if you could go ahead and lead us into the panel presentation.
I do not have any additional.
Very good. Good. Excellent.
Happy to turn it over to the panel.
So you know your order, so fingers are pointing to our IT director.
Information to you tonight. Look, I'm always telling everybody else to talk into the mic, and sure enough, I'm not talking to the mic. All right. Hello, Budget Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk into the mic and present our information to you tonight. My name's Scott Burke, for all of those that I haven't met yet. I've been with the city for 17 years now. I've been the IT director for the last 8. We have a small but effective team of 4 people in our IT department. We've had the same team in place since 2015, and while things in technology have changed a ton in those 8 years, as an internal services department, our mission is always to try to help everybody in the city understand and use technology to support their own service missions, and do it with a smile and a kind word as much as we can. And with that in mind, I'll just kick off the evening tonight with a discussion of information services, starting on, I believe, page 521 of your budget. Getting down there, down to Fund 80 here. To cover, let's see, next slide. So in the same theme of the original presentations from last night, we'll just kick off with some of our successes for the last fiscal year, 22-23. Mostly under the city government capacity is where our work tends to land. We've had our hands full, a lot of new technology around the city, as usual, from infrastructure to departmental support to ARPA projects. So internally, first in there, kind of our infrastructure improvements, we completed a full software version upgrade on our virtual servers, which is a big lift for us. We used to keep, 40, 50 physical boxes around, and now we really have 5 boxes that hold all the rest of the boxes. And it's, things have changed a lot. It's a big lift for us, and that really keeps us up to date in that piece for infrastructure until probably 26, 27. There's a few things like that in our budget, some big chunks we've bitten off lately, and we're just really laying a great foundation for the next few years to come. We've replaced some old network hardware around the city, like we usually tend to do year to year. We've kept our cybersecurity efforts moving and settled into our new physical home at the police station, where we moved all of our offices last year from the community center. So, and then the next one, the departmental service delivery projects. We've managed to keep all the police and fire mobile computers on the road 24/7 for another year, which is no small feat sometimes. We've dealt with some pretty large increases in video storage in the last year. Videos in cars. Sorry, Matt, but police buy new toys like big drones, taking big videos and finding places to put all those, and helping with new fingerprint machines. We handle building security camera systems for more buildings all the time. We've been helping out with the GIS transition and supporting this very budget process with the 2 parallel budgets. Requires separate reporting systems, separate database systems in the back end, and we'll be really happy to go back to doing one next year, just like I think finance and everybody else. So we've continued to successfully support and staff a hybrid mobile workforce, everything from deploying laptops to enabling secure remote access on all those laptops, supporting all the video tools in between, keeping all the remote meeting technology up in the remote meeting rooms all around the city. Just like tonight, there's a lot of boards and commissions in the city that are constantly and successfully holding remote hybrid meetings, which is such a big change for city processes and just allows us to facilitate information sharing to the public as our new way of doing business. We've worked with city departments to uplift the city website the last year to incorporate all the branding efforts and the new communication tools like iHeartMac, make information easier to find on the website. And for our 2 major ARPA projects that we've worked on, we're continuing to use some of the ARPA money for the AV upgrades, not only to this room, but rooms over at the community center, a little bit the fire department, a little bit the police station, everywhere there's remote meetings. And also for the city's firewall improvement project, which is another crucially important piece of infrastructure that'll pretty much polices all input in and out of the city network, keeps us safe, supported. In terms of stability, the last time we did that was 2016. So this is not a thing that we do very often, and it's another really nice building block to have in place till hopefully another 7 years. So 28, 29, 30 if we're lucky. So just set ourselves up for success in our infrastructure for years to come. So in short, for projects last year, it's been a busy year, and next year is just going to get even busier. So let's shift gears into our priorities for 23-24. As reflected in our proposed budget, we definitely have some capital increases in several categories. Along the same lines, first, internally we have some infrastructure needs. We have our city's main storage disk array is going into life next year. Just needs replaced. It's not cheap. We haven't done it in probably 7 years. Put it off a couple years for capital needs. And it's another piece of that stable base that we're really getting back up to speed. We do try to pursue cloud solutions where possible. Some systems you can lift into the cloud and keep their storage there, but there's still a lot of storage on premise that has to happen around the city to run a lot of our systems. So One of the next priorities next year is replacing MDTs in police cars, which I think was referenced last night a little bit too. Roughly speaking, there's about 15 patrol cars that rotate on off the road. We try to replace 3 of them every year to keep everything on a 5-year cycle. We didn't do any the last 2 years, and it's time to try to fill that gap a little bit. It's really great timing for a lot of reasons. Those computers in the cars are due for a technology refresh, and we're hoping to combine a little bit of leftover money of some capital next year. If we can replace as many of those as possible in one shot, we don't have to have the inefficiency of running 2 separate systems in all the different cars. So we're going to try to get as far as we can with that. The new laptops are compatible with existing in-car video systems and a lot of the other future police car needs that we know are kind of coming down the road at us. Another large project and piece of capital next year is our old friend, the Hansen system. On a broad scale in the city, one of the ways we think of things is every department kind of has one major piece of software, so to speak, that they run on. Police has a records management system, planning has an Acela permitting system, court has a Casella system, and we have this system called Hansen that's used by Public Works, Engineering, and Wastewater. It's hands down probably the oldest system in the city. It just keeps running and running. It's been eclipsed by a lot of new platforms. It's one of the first things I worked on when I started here in 2006, and it had been here for a while by then. So it's up there. It's still vendor supported. We're not the last customers on it, but we're on the dance floor and the music has stopped, and it's time to move on from that one. So the good news is that there's an entirely new platform out from the same company. With the help of Public Works and Engineering, we looked at a few different platforms to see if we want to do something completely different in the last year or so. It's wildly expensive to do that, and we have a good vendor that is far, far cheaper, especially when one of our goals is to bring forward our 20 plus years of data in the original system. That's a really expensive part of upgrading systems. And by sticking with that vendor, we're allowed to do that, which is just kind of makes the whole thing a slam dunk project. So the new platform will kind of allow us to bolt on a lot more modules in the future. It's kind of laying a framework for a lot of things that kind of Ann's team can be doing in the next few years. The reporting abilities, the ability to get data out and use data to make better decisions, figure out what's going on, is just going to be vastly increased. This is a system that takes care of work orders, kind of fleet management stuff, asset tracking, a lot of the kind of behind the scenes work for all those departments. So we're going to be really excited to get that done next year, hopefully. And then moving on to just to kind of summarize a few of our challenges for 23-24 while we're getting all the rest of those things done. First one at the top of the list there, we have the cybersecurity, as we mentioned before. We talked about this a little bit in our exec session with council recently, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but we're working hard on establishing a solid cybersecurity program around the city, keeping up on issues and items and things with multiple partners on the federal, local, state level, pursuing grant money, improvements from the state, and really just doing everything we can to keep the city safe. And that's just something that's going to continue to be a challenge ongoing. It's probably never going to go away in a long time. And we're just going to spend time and resources as much as we need to do next year working on that. So. And another one there, I have departmental software updates and purchases. We kind of talked about the big programs in each department. We talked about Hansen. There's others on the horizon. We try to look at things in, what's coming next year, but then we look at, kind of the 1 to 3 year horizon, 3 to 5 year horizon. We've got a police record system that we've been talking about for a couple years, and we're going to have to be working on upgrading that in the next couple years. As we discussed last night, we're looking at upgrade for the muni court system. I know we've got some work to do with the parks and keeping their system supported. And crazily enough, we're getting on towards 20 years on our ERP system because it started when I did. And it's not it's in that 3 to 5 year window that we talk about. And it's not a suggestion that we rip it out and do anything crazy in 3 to 5 years. But it's time to start thinking about that and looking at what's out there and what modules we're doing. And it's just, the years roll by on those systems and they keep working. It's a strong, serviceable system, but we like to look ahead of the mountains that we're going to have to climb again one day. So. Can you explain what ERP is?
Oh, sorry, the enterprise resource planning, it's the HR, payroll, purchasing, basically the whole system for finance and the rest of the city. We call it New World. Those are big ones, payroll, HR. Yeah.
sense, everybody? Good, okay. And the budget, too. It produces the budget for us, yeah. Well, our team produces the budget. This software tries to keep us from doing that sometimes, but, yeah.
One button and.
Yeah, you just say budget. And we're good. Okay, and the third one up here, I put a bullet for staffing in IT. Like every other department in the city, we're busy. We have our hands full, like everyone else. We've been really fortunate with the personnel stability we've had in our group. It's not going to last forever. We're staffing so many more hybrid meetings. We're getting stretched so many different directions. We're keeping departments operationally going 24/7. At some point, we're going to be looking for some more resources. When people take a vacation in a small department of 4, a 2-week vacation, it's hard, and it's hard on people for a couple of weeks, and then you got to catch up, and we're constantly reprioritizing what we're doing to serve departmental needs. And that's not even starting to discuss kind of the last item I'll touch on in the presentation, this little thing called the fire district coming up next year. And I'm just going to throw one slide together for that one here. Same thing, we're not going too deeply into the nuts and bolts here. We're expecting to stand up the technology for this new organization and keep things running pretty smoothly for some time, whether that's 6 months, a year, 2 years. Our goal is to get everything separated from the city as much as possible. So it just allows us for all kinds of different flexible choices, no matter which direction it goes. We have a fair amount of professional services money in the budget next year to help with this, to backfill the time that our staff is going to be taking to work on these projects, and also to get professional services to do things like stand up a new website, create a new email domain, transfer over email accounts. We got hardware to buy for a new board. We've got all the normal replacements for fire and ambulance. There's a lot of moving parts to setting up a whole separate organization, and technology is just one of them. It's just one of those. So we definitely have that on our as a goal, a priority, and a challenge for next year. So anyway, I'll stop there. That's kind of IS in a nutshell this year, and I am glad to answer any questions you have about the presentation or the budget or your Surface or your microphone or anything else that plugs in.
Scott, on cybersecurity, how do you feel about your current firewalls and software? This is both the soft and the hard firewalls that you have in place.
It's never enough, no matter what we do. And I feel, I mean, I want to say confident. I mean, it doesn't keep me awake at night every night. We buy some things in the city at low cost, and we invest in some things. And with the importance of the firewall, it's a thing that we invest in. And we have one of the top-of-the-line firewalls, and it's a decision we made in 2016. And it has paid dividends ever since. And we're going to keep that piece of the tech. I mean, it is literally like probably one of the more important things in our infrastructure. So
I'm very familiar with cybersecurity. We got whacked last year.
okay,
1 year ago tomorrow.
I'm sorry, that's horrible.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
What the hardware side of it? Are you using like a FortiGate then, or
We're actually using Palo Alto.
Palo Altos?
That's yeah, we've got a redundant pair of those, and it's got a hardware software solution. So
Yep. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Scott, are we insured for cybersecurity losses?
We are, yeah. We did a policy, I think we started doing that 2 years ago. We did it last year, and we're currently in the process of that renewal for next year, so.
Is the coverage staying available?
It is getting really hard to get every year. You used to get a lot for little, and now you get a little for a lot. And the conditions they put on you sometimes, there's literally vendors, they'll say, hey, if you're using FortiGate, we won't insure you because they had a problem last year. And
There's only 17 companies available right now to bid on cybersecurity for our needs.
not surprising, yeah. And then you go through the questionnaires and try to jump through all the hoops that may or may have not be put there by technological people. But yeah, we have a pretty good posture from where we're at. So we've still been able to get a reasonable amount of coverage at a decent rate. Yeah. That helps me sleep at night too. So.
Questions? Comments? We're going to let them off that easy?
Hey, the night is young, you know? I'll be here all night, you know?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone. So next up, not that I'm the MC here, but I believe I would be passing the torch to Heather, who isn't here. So I'm going to take a second and start up her video up here on the big screen. So bear with me for just a second here. Okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm Heather Richards, Community Development Director for the City of McMinnville. This is the Community Development Department budget presentation. In our department, we have 5 programs and divisions. We have planning, which is comprised of long-range planning and current planning, code compliance, economic development, affordable housing, which is a separate fund altogether, and building, which is also a separate fund. We like to think of ourselves as the 3 Ps, so we deal with people, property, and planning. In planning, we have 5 dedicated FTEs supporting our current and long-range planning, including a quarter FTE that supports our urban renewal program. Foundation to our program is citizen engagement and involvement. We support 6 standing committees that meet monthly, once a month or twice a month, and they're comprised of 79 volunteers. They're doing work for the city, making legal decisions like the Planning Commission and Historic Landmarks Committee, or they're also developing programs and projects to recommend to city council and city staff. We've worked hard on diversifying revenue sources and bringing other revenue sources into the programs, including our current planning fee structure, where we reworked the fee structure for 100% cost recovery and have been working towards that. In 2016, we were collecting $23,000 in current planning fees, and in 2022, we collected $204,000. We also aggressively go after grants for long-range planning as much as we can. In 2016, we had $6,000 in grants, and in 2023, $107,000. And then last year, we created the construction excise tax for affordable housing to support that program. Our challenges are similar to what they were last year. We're understaffed. The norm is 1 planner for 5,000 people. We have 5 FTEs for 35,000 people. So that can lead to a daunting workload. We're behind in our planning in terms of the required planning for the state and the strategic planning for the community. And there are more state mandates every year and reports due to the state that we're just falling further and further behind. Our staff is burnt out. In 2022, we had 50% staffing due to vacancies. And in planning, it's not something where we can slow down. We have statutory deadlines we need to meet, or that we can reduce the amount of permits that we're reviewing because we can't shut the door to permitting. Our budget represents for the 2023-24 budget projects a focus on long-range planning, especially regarding entitling land supply for housing in our urban growth boundary lands. We think housing is a critical priority for the community. So we're looking at updating the public facility plans and our area plans. We're behind on those by about 18 to 24 months due to that staffing vacancy issue in both planning and engineering. And so you'll see a lot of carryover from last year's budget to this next year's budget for that. And then we're also responding to state mandates. Several state mandates that have come over the last couple of years where we have to do some reports and data collection back to the state that's due by December 31. And then we also have design development standards for the 3-mile lane area. If we could, I would love to see us look at public engagement. I would like to see us change the tone of dialogue in McMinnville about planning to go from one of contention to one of collaboration. I'd love to see us do DEI planning, sustainability planning, and rebuilding the program, which were all priorities that we want to do in 2022 and 2023 as well. In terms of our core services investments, last year I came to you and said we're at base level. This year I'm coming to you to say I think we're below base and base level. We're barely keeping the doors open and struggling to do just that. We have enough in terms of professional services, but we don't have enough FTEs to do the work. And due to that, our planning staff have their heads down and they're grinding through the permits, and they're not doing much in the way of strategic planning, which is fairly counterintuitive for planners and for our workplace. In terms of code compliance, that's a program that moved from the police department to planning in 2018. It's a lateral move with 2 FTEs, and it moved from a penal program to administrative program. Just like planning last year, there was 50% staffing vacancy due to a long-term vacancy position. So we had 1 FTE in this program. He took care of 374 cases, but they were more complicated than in the past. We've seen a rise in graffiti cases on properties, and what we want to do this year is we want to put some time into creating some volunteer programs so we can engage service clubs and churches and other volunteer groups in helping us with these property nuisances. In economic development, we established this fund in 2022-23. It's 100% grant funded, no impact to the general fund. Then we hired an FTE in this fund, a special projects manager who is also 100% grant funded. This past year, it should focus on the Business Resiliency and Recovery Program that was funded through the Noble Grant with workforce development and business assistance grants and loans. And then this next year, she'll be focusing on the Innovation Center Public Infrastructure Feasibility Analysis and the 3rd Street Improvement Project. In building, we have a team of 4 FTEs. It's a 100% fee-supported program. And even though it's a small team, we're very lucky in the team that we have who are dedicated and have the skill sets to be able to support complex projects like the tech building at the Linfield University campus this past year. In terms of challenges, we are worried about the continued reduced permitting levels that we're seeing. Because what that leads to is a concern about redundancy. We don't have any redundancy in any positions in the building. If we lose somebody to vacation time or illness or retirement, we don't have anyone to backfill that position, which will lead to a customer service delinquency with our development community. We also don't have specialty inspections. We contract for that, and our building official is contracted as well. Affordable housing is also a new fund that was developed last year, and it's funded with construction excise tax and grants, so again, no general fund impact. It's seeing a lot of success in terms of moving some projects we've been working on for many years forward into fruition. The navigation center is under construction. Stratus Village will be coming in soon for permitting, and several other projects we're starting to see coming for permitting as well. The challenges are the needs still significant, both for subsidized and market workforce housing, and as gentrification continues, we expect that need to grow. And then we're also seeing NIMBYism more and more in terms of these affordable workforce housing going into neighborhoods. And then from the state, this last session in 2023, there's some large bills that went through that put a lot of workload on cities for housing planning. And we're worried about what that means and being able to support it. We are recommending 1 FTE in this program, an associate planner that will be dedicated to housing, 75% of that position funded with CET funds, so they can administer those programs and move them forward in the affordable housing programs. And then 25% funded with general fund funds so that this person can also work on those state mandates that are coming out of the legislative session. That would be an impact to the general fund of $31,800. Looking forward, the lack of investment in strategic long-range planning will impact the future foundation of this community. We're seeing it right now in the housing side of things, where the lack of supplies is leading to rising prices, the need for affordable housing, and gentrification, which is changing the demographics of our community. We see it in the quality of life in terms of the strategic planning that we're not doing for climate change and creative master planning. And then in economic development, as our housing prices continue to go up and remote work becomes more and more of an opportunity, we're fearful that this will become a bedroom community for people who are able to work higher end jobs that are based in the urban environments, such as Portland, Salem, and Eugene, and live here in McMinnville. And we're seeing less and less workforce that work here in McMinnville being able to afford to live here in McMinnville as well. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll pass those on to Tom. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
So Chair Hart, members of the committee, Tom Schauer, our senior planner, and Devin Aldrich, our admin support in the community development department are here to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Folks want to step up to the mic? And questions from the committee?
I have a comment. First of all, just want to say that I am exceptionally supportive of adding this FTE. We did have the opportunity to discuss in affordable housing the use of those funds, and while we don't have a formal recommendation to council yet, the committee overwhelmingly felt that that was necessary. And one of the reasons is because I think not just within the planning department, but with many of the partner organizations that we work with, it's not that we don't know what the tools are, we just don't have the hands to use them, or the minds, or the time. And so being able to address this problem by having somebody to coordinate those efforts and put that time in and go after those grants would be immensely not just helpful, it will start setting us on a path, and part of the reason of bringing this construction excise tax and 3 attempts to council to bring that through, and the last time without any opposition, and without any opposition from the building community either, was specifically so that we can start employing some of those tools. And I think investments in this, in community development, are going to be key in how we do exactly what Director Richards was mentioning, which is going to be how we actually do manage our growth. And I also wanted to note, she mentioned the number of volunteers, but volunteers also take management. So currently that's a department that's working with 79 volunteers, and that number is only growing. And they staff all of these committees: Historic Landmarks, Planning Commission, Landscape Review Committee. I mean, they're all tremendous lifts in and of themselves. And I think investments into that department, not just this year, but planning for that going forward, that there will be essentially a multiplier effect, that those positions will start to pay for themselves. We're going to have lands to annex in. Those lands are going to need to be planned. We need to be planning for that future of workforce housing. There are so many things that we're aware of that can be done, and so we really need to be investing in community development if we're going to be safeguarding and supporting the community and managing its growth going forward. So those are my thoughts. Thank you. I loved the presentation on it from community development. I loved the call outs. I loved the quantifying of the volunteer hours. Both monetarily and in terms of hours. I thought that was just great and just really anchored in the strategic plan. And so, thank you. It was a wonderful section to read, and that's all. Thanks.
So I didn't quite understand. There's comments that the 18 to 24 month behind. What exactly are you behind in?
Predominantly long-range planning projects. There's in the long-range planning section, there are a number of projects there that are listed as carryovers from the previous year. So some of those projects are start up on things like some of the area plans for the new UGB lands that need to be completed before those lands can be brought online and annexed. Some of the public facility planning, similarly, to update some of the projects that will be led by Public Works and Engineering, where planning's interfacing with those. the transportation system plant update. So a number of projects like that that have seen some delays, updating some of the work on the re-updating the buildable lands inventory work following the UGB expansion, and some of the work that goes along with that, the housing needs, economic development, economic opportunities analysis, updating those drafts that were initiated in 2018, 2019. So several of those projects right now.
So it sounds like, I mean, you're keeping up with the things that are immediate attention, but the things that require that, you know, it's like you take care of the things that are in front of you at that moment, but you cannot get to those long-term issues, which I think the mayor really just spoke to in terms of, you know, for the community to grow in a healthy fashion.
Correct, and in the presentation from Director Richards, we're seeing some new mandates around additional planning relating to housing, the reporting that goes along with that as well. So those have some statutory or deadlines and administrative rules as well. So some of the work that has to be completed by the end of this calendar year.
So just to clarify that, we are not really able to keep up on state mandated reporting.
So in that, if I understand, that's going to require another 3 FTEs or 4, is that what, that's what I'm getting from, you know?
She's asking for one, but yeah.
Yeah, she's asking for one, but I'm,
We'll take the one.
yeah, but, you know, the one category was a department or program that we could be proud of. It sounded like that was going to require like 3 additional FTEs and keep you all from burning out. Okay, well, we
The national standard is 1 planner per 5,000 population. So we should have a 7-person planning department. And as mentioned, it was said in the way of planning operated at 50% through 2022. That means that there were 2 planners through 2022 when there should have been 7.
And I guess one question, I mean, we're all, have this awareness of Oregon's really complicated, labor-intensive planning process. And so there's national standards of 1 per 5,000. Does that really work in Oregon? Is that I mean, national standards are national standards, but what's a good standard for the state of Oregon, I guess, if that's even something you can assess?
I don't have a number available, but it's challenging. There are statutory deadlines on, we've got the long-range planning work and then development review. Those land use decisions have statutory deadlines for getting decisions issued within a certain time frame too. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. You hear about, state of California, how long it takes to process some simple applications. We're knocking those out in timelines that they haven't even contemplated in other states. So those can't slide either. I don't have a number though for you in terms of standard that would be an Oregon standard.
Understand. Any other questions, comments?
You can go ahead, Zach.
Thanks for the time. A couple questions I see. Can you just give me an update on the Fox Ridge master plan? I know, and I've been reading, it's kind of coming down the pike, but just as planning perhaps is one to go that could just sort of delay the landing of it, or those usually can be prolonged. But what's the intended completion date and approval for that Fox Ridge area master plan?
Completion by the end of December. So we've just completed our last project advisory committee meeting last week. And we're working through developing a preferred alternative and then developing that into the plan with implementation components that would go into public hearings with, I believe, the Planning Commission hearing November and anticipating coming to council in December with that.
I see that the south, then I know we're trying to, the goal was one a year. And then, so we've got a 2023 carryover to get going on the southwest area plan.
Yes.
With that, tell me what we're thinking about for that especially in terms of what you just said with where we're at on the Fox Ridge Road plan?
That would be, I believe, to be completed by the end of the following calendar year. It's going to be probably a larger lift. It's a much larger area. It has quite a bit of land in there, quite a bit of larger tracts of land that will be coming along as we work on the public facility plans there. So that will be critical on the coordination on those as well.
So have those public facility plans happened? Or they're
The water and wastewater are underway. Transportation, that work is not yet.
Okay. So working backwards from, if we're hoping to get that done calendar next year, what's sort of the timeline for, RFP selection process to get that pieces moving to start, January?
Well, that work is underway. So we've advertised for Project Advisory Committee.
For the Southwest area plan already?
South.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, for transportation system.
Okay, yeah, and that's sort of next on my list of questions was transportation system plan. But you are or are not underway on getting going on the Southwest area plan too, then, just back to that one.
That, we don't have a consultant on board. No, that work has not yet started.
Okay, so can you give me an update on where we are in terms of getting the transportation system plan lifted and started?
I believe we are close to doing the RFP for that by, let's see, August.
Okay. Is that a carryover from last budget? Is it in this budget? Is it a little bit of both? I wasn't finding much, if any, or is it?
It's in the transportation budget.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great questions, Zach. Questions I have, some relate to current planning and some relate to long-range planning. They're both related to the 7750 line item in each. The page 138 in our budget would be the first one. Professional services for legal last year was budgeted at 7,500, and this year it's budgeted at 50,000. And the other two line items, or the other two items in that line item haven't really moved at all. So I was curious why we need such a jump in legal services for current planning.
I'm sorry, page 138.
138 and number 7750 says professional services. I'm on the digital version, but I think the page numbers are the same.
That's correct,
you're
yeah.
right.
Okay. Yeah, I think part of that is due to essentially still contracting for city attorney services. So we have contracted for part of that through working directly with a land use attorney. And the other side of that, I believe, is predominantly that in some of the legal issues we're dealing with, there's a need for that land use specialization to get into some of the expertise related to some of the litigation that has come up recently.
Okay. And then when you get to the long-range planning, which is just a couple more pages, page 141, still the same professional services, 7750. In there we see legal services at 96,000, and when I pull up last year's proposed budget, our actual budget, adopted budget, legal services was at 20,000. There's about $170,000 jump overall in that line item. A lot of that is carryover, but one question is, do you guys have capacity to complete all those projects without burning yourselves out, or should we be more realistic about your workload? And B, when we have $96,000 in legal services and $50,000 in legal services, at what point do we as a city explore hiring an attorney for the planning department.
I don't want to speak to that issue of hiring a separate attorney for the planning department. I think probably if you're looking at a permanent full-time city attorney, you're depending on that position, you may have different levels of land use experience in that position that may affect the need for contract services. With long-range planning, we're talking about a lot of big lifts that we haven't seen, issues haven't gotten less contentious. Just as a reminder, with the UGB adoption in 2020, that work started in the late 1990s. Ended up with a UGB adoption in the 2005-2006 timeframe that was approved by DLCD, LCDC, went to the Court of Appeals, came back to the city in 2012-13. That work doesn't get less contentious over time, so I suspect that budget has to do with both for next year continuing to have some contract services for land use specialization, and the number of long-range projects that are underway that would be coming to adoption that we'd anticipate there may be legal issues on those long-range projects.
Chair, let me add a little more context. The contract services for land use planning this year have been primarily nested in admin. The council will see a supplemental budget next week. We spent about $40,000 on outside counsel just on the Gwendolyn Hotel project this year. One of the reasons, there are a couple of reasons that we haven't tried to hire a dedicated land use specialist. One is that most of them are in private sector and not in the public sector. And the other is that while the work is very specialized and can consume a lot of time, it's not necessarily even work. It tends to be project driven and issue driven, and so there are spikes in the workload that would make it a little bit challenging to manage with a full-time on-staff attorney. All of those are worthy questions, and as we move to recruiting our next city attorney in the summertime, depending on how successful we are and the skill set that person brings, it could have an impact on these kinds of specialty contracts, particularly land use.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is probably for Finance Director Jennifer Quare. I just want to make sure that I understand the division of the accounting in the administration over the current and the long-range planning. So administration is basically building stuff, because there's only 0.1 of the community development director in that.
Yeah, the different departments will use admin to discuss the management role within the department, and so that's why it's a fairly limited slice of the entire department. And because the community development department has been really committed to understanding and updating its fee structure, having these different slices in the accounting system itself helps us follow that and analyze it easier. So it's also been a work in progress over the years. So, you do see some change year to year, and that's because hey, why don't we try it this way? Maybe it'll, save us some time or make it clearer for folks. So does that go to your question?
Yeah, I was just wanting to clarify, thank you, because there was the travel and education is blank. So I just wanted to make sure that the community development director has opportunities, because I saw it cataloged in a few other places. And then I had a couple more questions, and I don't know who the right person is to answer this, but page 134, account number 7720-10. So we went from $2,200 in repairs and building maintenance to $2,600, estimated $94 now back down to 42. And I just want to make sure that that building's not going to be neglected. Oh, I'm so sorry. Page 134, 772010. You've got time.
So I think I can help with that one too. It's the repairs and maintenance of that building are split among 3 different places. You'll see it because engineering staff work there, community development staff work there, and then the building fund also is there. So they share those costs across the 3 sectors. So
kind of, oh, sorry, talking the mic, Scott, I'm doing really great. So we split the cost of building maintenance and repair between all of us, depending on how many, so you will see that the building fund doesn't quite contribute as much as the planning does because we have more planning staff than we do building staff. So there's an equation, which I don't have a copy of that here, in which we split those costs between all of us. If that answers your question.
Kind of. So I guess what I'm trying to get to the building one now. What I want to make sure of is that we didn't go, it's kind of what Councilor Garvin brought up is that, you know, in totality, perhaps it went from $25,000 among the 3 departments down, and I'm just, because I'm not fast enough. Maybe Adam can scroll faster than I can page flip. 25 across all the departments down to 10,000. Ultimately, like if that building needs a roof or siding or something, you know all the right people, and that's great, but I just want to ensure that that item is properly budgeted and that we're not going to get blindsided with, you know, a $25,000 or $30,000 something rather.
I have the spreadsheet open where we calculated these. Which line item were you looking at, Councilor Payne?
And 772010.
Okay, so it was 9,400 and went to 4,200. I'm pretty sure we had a painting project last year that increased that number. So I'm looking at the breakdown. Yes, the painting was 15,000 last fiscal year. So this coming fiscal year, that is not in there because we're still planning on doing that as far as I know. That's why the number is going down.
Okay, great, thank you, Anne. Well, thank you. All the community development building people. And my only other question is, in all of these, there's no professional services for grants. And Mayor Drabkin kind of referenced that, you know, planning is a heavy load. Community development is a heavy load. And so I was just curious if it's been explored to have somebody that is responsible specifically for grants or a grant writer who would be grant funded. I mean, they would, you know, capture their own.
Specifically within community development or citywide?
Yeah, and Director Richards kind of referenced it in her really great presentation in her absence, that, you know, you go after grants as often as you can. It doesn't mean you're going to get them, but also she's the community development director, not a grant writer. So I just want to ensure that.
Just my perception is that it is Heather or staff members that are putting those grants together. But that said, other departments, I know both the police department and the fire department will work with grant writers that have particular expertise in the kinds of things they're going after and employ what you just described, that a grant writer will take their fees out of it's part of the grant expense, and then, you know, you roll with it. So I don't know that there's been a lot of that systematically across the city, but that is one of the things. We don't have a grant support function from a central services perspective to support that work.
Okay.
I'll also say that grant writing is another one of those very specialized activities, and I don't know of many, if any, communities our size who have dedicated grant writers on staff. They typically have staff expertise to handle routine grants, and then we'll typically work with either a private sector consultant or sometimes a council of governments who often has grant writing capacity to take on specialty grant. And we actually do periodically work with the council of governments and explore those kinds of options.
Thank you.
I might also mention, for example, for Third Street, we've included grant writing within the RFP for the consultant that we're going to hire to help us with that. So I think there are other avenues besides just in-house staff to look after grants.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
As we're going down this road of specializing and attorneys and other things that we want to get done this summer, is it possible to utilize a paralegal as a support staff to an attorney that would be able to reach out into these other departments and give them that legal support that just an attorney might not be able to?
We actually have a part-time paralegal position budgeted in the city attorney's office, and when Amanda was here, we had a paralegal that was on staff part-time, as well as a part-time legal assistant who'd worked with her for quite a long time. So we expect that kind of support for an in-house attorney.
Questions, comments? Oh, go ahead.
So thank you for all of your hard work. I hope that we can eventually staff the community development planning department because it is a really important piece for growing sustainably, and also, cost savings elsewhere probably as well. I had a question about, is this, community development fund, is that where, how and when we would bring on that $1.50 that's under levied now? Is surveys or community dialogue and engagement for that budgeted into this fund somehow?
So I'll take that one. What we expect to do, and this is really conceptual, so for those of you who want to hear things more concrete, this is not going to be your jam. As we work our way through designing that process, we're going to rely a lot on the core services analysis to help inform and get people's feedback on those core services, and the kinds of things that the departments are talking about are already in that core services analysis. So that's going to be a substantial to the knowledge that we share with the community when we're getting feedback on community ideas on how and when to spend those funds.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And then, this is a more technical question, I guess, but in the narrative of the budget, Heather talked about the 1,000-unit housing deficit. How is that calculated?
So there's a couple things we do. One is housing needs analysis. All of the land use planning is based on forecasting and projections. So we're looking at an estimate of the number of housing units we'd need each year to stay current with the forecast population growth. And then we look at those annual population actual estimates. And we're finding that for the expected number of units that we would need to keep pace with that, if we weren't constrained, we are constrained, and we're not meeting the total housing need that we would expect to, and not for sure the share of affordable housing units of that too. So that compounds each year as we look at the forecast and actual growth in population and the number of housing units that are being built.
Right. Thank you. But what do you mean by a unit?
When we talk about a unit, it's whether it's a detached home or an apartment, each one of those is a dwelling unit. So
like one person equals one unit or one family?
No, those are household units. When we look at population growth, we look at average household sizes. So when we talk about units, it's a home, whether it's a detached home or a townhouse or an apartment unit.
Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback on that one right there. With the Fox Ridge project, as well as the 3 Mile Lane, as well as kind of what's ongoing at what I'll call Baker Hill, how many units are we projecting that could be for the foreseeable future?
So for those, when you say the foreseeable future, I guess not what the need is, but what we're expecting to see come
Right,
in with
right.
those. I mean, I guess I can only speak to what's in the works right now, and we have several things in the pipeline now. The Housing Authority working on Stratus Village of 175 units. We have some other projects, larger scale multifamily, 144 units in the works, 125 in the works. I don't know what the timing is on some projects, but several of those are in or close to submittal for land use review and would be moving in the building permit stage. So I think the forecast number, yeah, I'm trying to think between sort of what the capacity of the areas are versus what we're seeing coming in that we're expecting to see build. I mean, I'd say in the next 3 years, I mean, I'm trying to think under construction and, probably 450 units in there of multifamily.
Okay.
So let me tag on with some higher level kind of gross numbers. The urban growth boundary is our 20-year land supply. And over the next 20 years, the population is forecast to grow another 10,000 people.
44 is what's adopted, and we're looking at probably another 3,000 beyond that.
So roughly that, based on our historic average household sizes, we'd need to average about 200 dwelling units a year to keep up with that population growth. And so over a 20-year or so period, we'd be looking at about 4,000 housing units. And that's forecast to be accommodated within that urban growth boundary expansion, plus some expectation of redevelopment inside the community.
So we do have 1,000 dwelling deficit right now. So is that goal of 200 that takes care of that deficit over a period of time, or that would be, let's make 1,000 units today and then we have 200 on top of that?
Well, so we don't have the land supply to do 1,000 units today, so that's the other dynamic. I think we're down to under 200 entitled building lots.
We're not keeping pace with the need to maintain 200 a year. We're falling further behind.
Okay, thank you. Next would just be a comment, kind of piggybacking on Mayor Drabkin about the affordable housing, being a small business owner, definitely hiring people in the lower wage bracket. I mean, we're already at a very crucial point for our city and surrounding area, and so I definitely support that full FTE position in the affordable housing and being able to work with, I think, even more partners. I know the Willamette Valley Wineries Association, it is like one of their top goals right now is working on affordable housing. I know it's a conversation going on with Linfield, as well as a visit McMinnville. So I definitely would help support or want to support anything we can do to help that department as well. So thank you.
Could I just add one thought to the conversation around UGB expansion as well, and these population forecasts, which is that the UGB expansion that we passed was the UGB, as noted, that was started in 1999, so therefore the growth projections and what we passed were based on growth projections from 1999. We couldn't restart that. Well, we could have restarted the entire process, but we chose not to restart the entire process, but to pick up what had been put down and carry that across the finish line. But that also means that what we brought in to the new UGB no longer keeps pace with current growth projections. You disagree?
Only because
seeing it statewide, or are we seeing it within this region?
We're seeing it statewide and it's seeping into the region. I can't speak to the specific.
Go ahead, Zach.
Just a comment, I was thinking about what Councilor Garvin said and some of the themes from planning, and just wonder if it wouldn't be worth ensuring we can have a year of focused, successful long-range planning efforts in light of all the state mandates that come through, with current staffing levels and hopeful staffing levels, to just refresh and ensure have the right priorities and aren't over-prioritizing if it means a little bit longer time and known, not necessarily delays, but known timelines pushed out rather than sort of ad hoc, we just didn't get that done. I think it'd be a worthwhile discussion to ensure that we're understanding the requirements and the electives and prioritizing the electives accordingly. I think housing will likely be at the top of the list, but what else is in there, and what can we have that conversation of to ensure that the planning department has a chance to not just grind their noses off, but be successful and work well. That's it.
Anything else? Go ahead.
This is not related to the conversation we just had, but the Community Development Fund oversees a lot of the voluntary committees and boards in the city. Does that fund, or does, I guess, maybe anything in the city support the new community citizen task force at all? Is there any part of the budget or any staff time that goes to that?
Which task force are you referring to?
Well, I don't know what it's specifically called. It's like the citizen task force is what I've heard of it as.
Talking about the homeless, you're like focused on making sure
No, although there is occasionally, so that community group has a council liaison, and then we are supplying staff to go out and do education. So our chief of police has spent about an hour and a half. Our Parks and Recreation director has availed herself to go and do presentations. I believe Officer Height also spent time over there doing education, and maybe one other member of our
Municipal court.
Municipal court has done education with that, but no, there's no dedicated staff member to that.
And that was actually by design. That's a community group who's doing some work. Each department essentially staffs their own committees, commissions, and volunteers.
Okay, so like that, like the support then that the city is giving is essentially no different than it would do just like training or education wise for any group of people that asked for it, that kind of level of support?
That was a group of citizens that requested to have some support from the city, and so we created that support by making our facilities available, by providing a council liaison so that we could provide clear and accurate information, and that they know what we're working on for their initiatives, but it's not a committee of the city.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think it was a committee of the city, I just was curious if there were city resources supporting.
It is taking city resources, but it does not have dedicated city resources.
Good questions. Anything else? I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the introduction. There we go. Okay. Well, I'm Ann Pagano, Public Works Director. I've been the director for 18 months, so happy to be here. My first slide, I wanted to point out that next week is Public Works Week, National Public Works Week, and just give a shout out to all of our awesome Public Works staff. Woo! This is kind of our org chart, just showing the 4 divisions within our department. So wastewater services, Leland Kester is our manager. He's behind me here. Our municipal airport administrator is Willie Williamson. He's on the Zoom call. Our new city engineer is James Lofton for our engineering division, and David Renshaw is also here, and sorry, I should have said James is on the Zoom call. And David Renshaw is our superintendent for operations. So I have these great people here to help me if I have any questions that I can't answer. So there's a picture of almost all of us down there in the corner. So we got that at our last Public Works lunch from last year. Okay, I'm going to start with engineering, and I'll go through the 4 divisions one at a time, and I'll stop in between and ask for questions, so we don't have to go through all 4 and then double back. I'll start with engineering. Successes from this last fiscal year, as I already mentioned, we hired our city engineer. It took about a year, and I thank you, James, by the way. And I really believe that was a direct result of the class and compensation study, so that was a great thing. We also hired our new city GIS specialist, who's replacing John Barnes, who's retiring next month after 27 years with the city. So we're really happy to have Andrew on board, and he's doing a great job. The other success is we got our Mercury total maximum daily load plan approved by DEQ, which was a pretty big effort as well. But that's just the first step. Now we have to actually implement it over the next 5 years. So engineering's taking the lead on that with help from wastewater and operations. And then we completed the second of 4 inflow and infiltration sanitary sewer improvement projects. Next one. Our priorities for the coming fiscal year are focusing, as always, on our core services, managing the city's transportation, wastewater, stormwater, airport, and related capital improvements, including the ARPA projects, of course. For engineering, reviewing and inspecting public infrastructure improvements as part of private developments, managing our sidewalk, right-of-way, and construction permits, maintaining the city's public infrastructure records in GIS, and also managing procurement and contracts for not only public works projects, but engineering also manages the contracts for the city maintenance contracts like janitorial, HVAC, and elevator. And I'll talk about that more when we get to the operations slides. Next one, thanks. Challenges are similar to, I think, what Heather was talking about. All positions are filled, but we are still understaffed. And we are also catching up from about 2 years of unfilled positions. So we just, basically filled the last position with James about 6 months ago. So that put us behind. And I will mention some specific projects that are behind schedule, since there was a question for the planning department. The third of the 4 sanitary sewer rehab projects is about a year behind, but we are working on it, and we're planning on doing it starting it next fiscal year. There's a pedestrian signal that we are going to put in at Baker Creek Road and Meadows, which is, I think, about a year behind schedule at this point, but that also is actually next on the list. And then the stormwater master plan is going to end up being about 2 years behind schedule by the time we get that going. Other challenges, private development reviews are taking up to about 50% of engineering staff time with minimal cost recovery. And new regulations such as the TMDL I spoke about earlier will require additional staff to manage. So those will be things that we're going to have to work through in the coming couple of years. So, and then also challenges are lack of support staff, such as the contract procurement specialists that could potentially help with those contracts that I mentioned for building maintenance. And then facilities maintenance, which is an ad package that I'll talk about later. But that is something that, engineering has been spending time on, as well as many other folks throughout the organization. And so these tasks pull engineering and operations staff away from their primary duties. I think that's it for engineering. If we want to open it up for engineering questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on the noted private development review at not cost recovery, how would we be able to get that up to cost recovery?
Yep, so that's on our list. We're looking at considering a structure similar to what planning does. So they have review fees, and so we're looking at implementing something similar to that. We'll probably need a consultant to help us work through that. But yes, that is high on our list of things to do, is look at cost recovery for private development.
And shame on me for not knowing, as I sometimes am part of the private development reviews, but are you on your own schedule of fees, or would you be able to piggyback off the building and planning?
Yep,
but you just need to generate your own value that would then plug into that schedule of values?
Yes, there will be overlap. There may be some specific to engineering, but there would definitely be some overlap with those fees.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I think we should get there.
Yes, thank you.
Engineering questions from anyone? Go ahead.
When you have new development, does the city staff inspect the installations, or do you count on the engineer for the project to inspect and just spot check?
We inspect the public right-of-way installations, anything that's in the public right-of-way.
Okay. Do you charge fees for that?
We do get fees for those, for that. That's part of our construction permit agreement, yes.
Go ahead.
Move on. Okay, airport. Only have one slide for this. Successes. We hired our awesome airport administrator, Willie, on Zoom. It's been great having Willie on board. And also, we updated the airport minimum standards with Willie's help. We did that recently through council. And also completed a new striping on the taxiways at the airport just a few months ago. Our priorities for this coming fiscal year are to begin the update to the airport master plan, which we'll be bringing the contract to council on Tuesday, so we'll see you there. Look for funding opportunities for business and economic development at the airport. We're going to be starting design for a fencing project to fence in the northern portion of the airport for safety. And also the Comcast building there on Nimbus Loop, their lease was up and they chose not to renew it, so we own the building now. So we're going to rent the building out, and that should help bring in additional revenue for the airport. And challenges just maintaining a self-funded airport. We're doing fine right now, but I think looking at business and economic development would be a good thing to do in the future. That's all I had for the airport.
Any airport questions? You're looking at Adam like you were expecting. I think that's correct. I think there's always an airport question from Adam, so.
I'll call on Willie and ask him if he has any insights on the vision for economic development opportunities to get more money in the budget to possibly expedite some of the wishes of airport users out there. As we've seen more traffic out there from my time on the airport commission, we've definitely seen elevated complaints of the condition of our city-owned T-hangars, our current apron conditions, and our taxiway conditions, and especially this time of year when weeds and grass start to grow up. So that was a hot topic item at our last airport commission meeting just on Monday. So I think we as council will most likely start to see public comment over the next year. I could see people starting to elevate those comments more than just talking amongst themselves. So I think that's something we should keep in mind, and from a personal standpoint, make sure that our land leases and our building leases and the things we do generate revenue from out there are at current market conditions, and that we're not losing opportunities. Something I've personally pushed for since being on the airport commission is to find a way to power our unelectrified hangars, and what the ROI would be on that to increase revenue long term. And that's still something that I would like to entertain, and if that ROI calculation does come to fruition, look at a intergovernmental loan to make that happen so we could support the airport more than we currently do.
Thank you, Counselor Garvin. We can follow up with you on those items.
I actually do have a question. The Comcast, is that the 4025 Nimbus loop?
Yes.
Okay. And we have a budget of $35,000 for deferred maintenance at time or reversion to airport ownership. Do we think $35,000 is going to be enough in today's dollars for that?
I believe Willie has looked into that, and that's his best estimate at this point.
Okay. That's not a lot of money.
Willie's a good carpenter.
Okay, I think we're moving on.
Other than that, just want to say thank you, Ann and Willie, for all the work you've done over this last year, getting the airport moving forward, and we have really good rapport out there right now with the airport users. I think probably the best we've had since I've been on the commission, so great job.
Great, thank you.
Just want to state for the record that Counselor Chenoweth logged off.
Oh, thank you.
I would add that the Airport Commission interviews were probably my favorite interviews of the entire year for any of our volunteer organizations. I think we had 18 such just exceptionally qualified community members. It was the hardest decision making. It was like, how come we can't, it was one of those times you just wanted to appoint everybody because of that. And so I'm really excited to know that that group of volunteers is also working on airport master planning. And I do see the airport as, one of our most precious assets and with tremendous potential as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, I will move on to operations. That includes park maintenance, street maintenance, and transportation budgets. So for park maintenance, the core services update is basically without our ad package for the additional M&S and capital resources, our core services would remain below base. But the ad package approval would be a very good thing. It would be the first of a 3-year effort to move the core services to above base, focusing on materials and services and capital resources. Our successes are we've purchased some ARPA-funded fleet equipment renewals. That's been really great for efficiency and for our crew. The splash pad design consultant has been selected. That's an ARPA project that I think the community is really excited about. And we've been working with a security company on a park security pilot program for the last few weeks, and that's going to go on through the next month, and we'll see how that's going, but it's going great so far. It's been really helpful. Challenges are just maintaining our service levels with limited resources, and as you've heard from other department heads, camping impacts has increased expenses and workload. Our priorities are completing the scheduled ARPA projects and, of course, park safety. For the street fund, our core services are traffic operations, pavement and pedestrian facilities maintenance, stormwater maintenance along with the wastewater services crew, maintaining a fleet of 64 vehicles and 168 pieces of equipment, and emergency response. Successes in the street fund are the fleet and equipment renewals with ODOT COVID relief funding. So I think we've exhausted that funding, but purchased some really good equipment with that. And then what I'm very excited to announce again, our Adopt a Road program. We've got 5 service groups already, including the wonderful Visit McMinnville team, as you can see in the photo there. And anyone here or listening, if you're interested in an Adopt a Road program, the phone number is right here on the slide. Had to put my plug in there. Challenges, flat gas tax revenues, and match that up with inflation, and, you know, we have issues, so we're working through that. And also in this, the street fund, you know, camping impacts there too, in addition to the parks maintenance. Priorities are design and constructing local pavement repair projects, and also updating our pavement management plan next fiscal year. And the transportation fund, our core services here are the capital improvements and contracted pavement rehab. Our successes, we applied for and obtained a Safe Routes to School grant, upwards of $1 million, in support of a school pedestrian safety project for in the vicinity of Sue Buell and Patton Middle Schools. And then our challenges are the ODOT fund exchange program revisions may severely reduce resources available for pavement preservation projects. We're still working through that and trying to get as much information as we can, but that may be affecting our budget in the transportation fund. And again, inflationary impacts on construction costs. Priorities are the street and pedestrian improvement projects, as well as the transportation system plan that we talked about earlier with planning. And finally, I wanted to just cover the facility management ad package. This is a core service update for next fiscal year. This would be covering facility management for 56 structures at 28 locations, or about 363,000 square feet. The replacement value in 2018 was $116 million for our structures. And they date back to 1924. Community center. And service level remains below base for that. The challenge is that there's currently no centralized approach to facilities management, so that's what this ad package would give us. We also do not have a funded facilities capital improvement program, and limited staff technical knowledge for building-related issues like HVAC and that sort of thing. We just don't have the technical knowledge on staff for that. And the current approach pulls assigned staff away from their main duties and tends to be on-demand work when issues arise. So in the little bubble there, thank you, David, put together some stats for us. There's currently approximately 18 of our staff devote about 3,500 hours total per year for facilities management. And it's estimated that the ad package would free up about 2,300 of those hours, reducing the impact of this duty by about 66%. So it would give other staff more time to focus on their duties. So the ad package is one full-time employee and seasonal help, the extra help, vehicle and tools, and I will point out that there are no capital resources included in the ad package, just the capital that's outlined in the budget for specific building. I think that's it for operations.
I did have a question looping back to park maintenance, and you mentioned the ad package. This is the ad package that's now available because of the approval of the fire district? Is that what you?
That's correct, yeah. Both of those would be for if the fire district.
Yeah, and there's on page 37, there's a list of ad package items, which I would note include 2 loos that are being purchased. Where will those be going, the 2 that?
So loos are the restroom like at J. Pearson Park.
Right.
And the long-term vision is to replace all of the restrooms at the parks with loos eventually, because they're safer and less maintenance. We do have loos in the budget, but we are still working through where and when we would want to install those. So it's kind of a placeholder. Susan and Matt and I have been discussing that, and Jeff, and we just are still working through that, I guess I would say.
I would note that I remember when the first loo was installed at J. Pearson, that it had the word Portland loo, and that I remember Susan out there scrubbing the word Portland out, because that's not a Portland loo, that's a McMinnville loo, right?
Right.
Good job.
I have a question. On page 393, you reference that there's no direct funding source for stormwater-related work. Is that alluding to the possibility that we might have a direct funding source in the future? And what kind of funding source would that?
Yeah, we will be looking into potential funding sources, and that also relates to the TMDL plan implementation I mentioned earlier. So there are additional costs with that. So some options would be a utility fee or SDCs related to stormwater.
And just to add to that, we've been working with Deb Gallardi, who the council's familiar with, in the rate study work that she's done with us for wastewater over the years. And I don't know if it's scheduled yet, but I think we're planning to bring Deb to talk. Is it in July or August?
We haven't scheduled it yet, but yes, we are planning on July.
So Deb will be in front of the council talking about some of those potential fee structures that could support a stormwater utility as we work our way through the planning process.
Okay. I think that sounds very important and useful. Another question I had was on page 421, and you talked about it a little bit in your presentation, you talked about the fund exchange program being reduced or possibly eliminated. Would that affect our ability to maintain our streets in this upcoming year, you think?
The things we have budgeted for this coming year will be covered. It's more further out years.
You're preparing us for
yes.
potential. Okay, because I know the preventative maintenance is so important, and so I was like, oh my goodness, if all of a sudden, so that's good to know. It's in the future. We'll deal with it then, I guess.
Very near future, though, if it.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the narrative portion, it mentions 1.75 million is what we would need for preventative maintenance on those streets.
Annually.
And it looks like there's only $508,000 budgeted for it this year. Is that right? Or, I mean, I might be missing it, so I'm asking somewhere else. Where I saw it was on page 430.
Bringing in reserves to help me with that one.
That narrative simply talks about what our historical typical amount of resources dedicated. No one heard a thing I said, did they? That, it really isn't a budgeted figure. What it's describing, it's comparing what we've historically put into preservation each year to what we should be putting into preservation each year. So we put in close to 575, and whereas the years have gone by, that need is closer to 175. It's trying to describe the gap.
Okay. So in this year, we still have a pretty big gap because it's even lower than what we'd normally been putting into that.
Correct. So part of the offset on that is we doubled the size of our slurry seal program. Slurry seal is a surface treatment program that we apply to fairly good streets. It extends the life of those streets 7 to 10 years, and it's about 1/10 the cost of a pavement overlay.
Yeah, that's why it seems like an important thing.
It is,
On an early year.
the fund exchange situation is concerning.
Yeah, and how, do you have any idea on the likelihood of that, the ODOT fund exchange? Like, that's what's going to
Well, I don't. We know that there's legislation or there's a bill in front of the legislature now that will basically require ODOT to put the fund exchange program into state law. Right now it's an ODOT policy or program, so they're under no requirement to do it. This is a choice they made years ago. Because the impacts that they're seeing on their O&M fund, their operations and maintenance fund, they've decided they can no longer fund this, and this is one of the places they've gone after.
Okay.
It hurts us especially because we have to use those funds not only for preservation and maintenance, but also to pay for the bypass loan. And that's where the big hit comes.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just still worried.
Me too.
Yes.
I got another question for you, Renshaw. In the contract services, it looks like this year we're going to spend about $250,000 on citywide sweeping, plus another $35,000 on downtown sweeping. At one time, did we do that in-house?
We did, sir. When I first came here in 2005, I've always run my own sweeping operations. When I came here, we had a sweeping operation. And then along about 2013, when we were faced with the decision of upgrading the equipment, we made the operational decision. We went through a cost-benefit analysis comparing the cost of service relative to contracting versus the cost of ownership and doing the service ourselves. At that point, it was cheaper to contract it, quite frankly. The truth of the matter is we're getting back to that tipping scale where it's probably, the next time we review that contract, I will probably be recommending to Ann that we revisit that. The value of contracting is you don't own the equipment, and so and sweepers are, there's no nice way to say it, they're just really, really a painful thing to take care of. There's a lot of moving parts on a sweeper, and plus you have to have redundancy, especially if we wind up with a stormwater utility. It will no longer be, hey, we just missed your streets. You will have to sweep to be in compliance with your permit. And so, we'll have to tackle it very, very intentionally, but the dollar figures we're seeing now, I can't argue. It's something we're gonna have to consider in the future.
So with it needing to be done with the stormwater utility, does that mean the capital purchase could be funded out of wastewater?
Correct. Not out of wastewater. Don't get me in trouble with my friend back there. No, because it wouldn't be a wastewater source, but eventually, if you had a dedicated stormwater source, absolutely. As could the actual sweeping operation. Most communities that have a stormwater utility, their street sweeping and their equipment renewals and all that come from that revenue source.
Oh, yeah. Well, you definitely caught on to what I was alluding to, but definitely next budget cycle, I would like to see a cost-benefit analysis of bringing that almost $300,000 back in-house and maintaining a street sweeper program. Thank you.
Oh, just to tag on, I forecast that Deb Ghilardi would be talking about street utility or stormwater utility options for fundraising. We'll also be talking about the kinds of services that we could support with that stormwater utility. There are things that we're not doing now that would be supported, but as David said, some of the street sweeping and tree work and work on our parking lots that we're either doing through the general fund or the street fund could be supported through a stormwater utility, and that would free up those other resources to more directly be related to street maintenance and upkeep.
All the work we do to manage the stormwater quality facilities on Hill Road and Alpine and Old Sheridan, that would all most likely transition to that funding source.
Oh, yeah. Also in that same contract services, the homeless camp cleanup went from 5,000 to 15,000 this year. What does that get us capacity-wise? Is that 15 cleanups? Is that 3 cleanups?
No, it's about, I think the number you quoted was what?
15 or 3. Oh, the number was 15,000.
Yeah, it's about $5,000 a cleanup, round figures. Because what happens is these sites tend to be offline, so they're Davis Dip Culvert, Elmwood Culvert, undeveloped rights away, remote locations, so it's hard to get in and out, and they tend to be hidden, so they tend to grow, and it's not a pull a truck up and empty, it's a couple-day operation. So it's a very expensive way to do it.
And these are properties that we are responsible for. They're not ODOT right-of-ways or...
No, we own them. Trust me. And actually, if it's a street fund, it's almost, there are some individual tax lots, but most of it's right-of-way stuff.
I'd like to tee into that. And this came up last night, too. I just don't fully understand the answer yet. But it comes up twice in your budgets. It comes up in park maintenance, and it comes up in streets as well. And so in reading from your budget, due to the pandemic, the inmate work crew is no longer available to the city for projects. So that comes up under park maintenance, and then in street funds, it gets pointed out again. And then in the history, in one of the histories, those hours are, right-of-way maintenance, that's what tees it into that, is where it specifically comes up again. And then in the histories, there's a call out on 2010 where it quantifies about 1,900 hours that were being managed and used. And so I guess I'm still a little unclear on the lack of that contract with the county and then our ability to bring that back online as a resource for these very specific things, park maintenance and right-of-way maintenance.
Well, let me try and give you a little background. Into the pandemic, the county obviously wasn't incarcerating as many people. To back up a step, county does all of their park maintenance with the inmate crew, right? And then by extension, they would have contracts with various communities, us, Amity. I think they maintain the athletic fields for Amity High School and those sorts of things. Long about 2 years ago, they canceled all those contracts because they couldn't staff them. Their priority has to be their own facilities, and so they literally canceled all these contracts. They have a new parks director now, and I know they're in the process of considering getting back in that business. We're in touch with them because it's a tremendous resource for us. It's a tremendous resource. We pay a limited amount of dollars for supervision for sometimes a crew of 10 people. And so, in very labor-intensive jobs, that crew fits the bill really well. So we're hopeful it's going to come back. Right now, it's not in service. It's not available to us or anyone else that I know of. I know in my conversations with, I want to say that lady's name is Jessica Beach, they're in the process of looking at trying to restart it. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Well, yeah, thank you. I had a question about that as well. This was brought up last night. I didn't quite follow the response, but I was under the impression that voters in 2022 passed constitutional amendment that prohibits those kinds of work crews
Yeah.
working for free. And so I'm wondering, are we relying on a program that's still available to us? Or are we asking about a program?
Well, that was one of my questions last night, was trying to understand it, because we're talking about the contract cancellation, broadly used resource. Is it a resource or is it not, and what are the limiting factors? And that's kind of where I'm trying to wrap my head around too.
I would guess that would be a limiting factor. In the conversations I've had, they've indicated they're looking at bringing it back.
Yeah, my understanding of that, Bill Sal, is that you can no longer mandate that but you can still offer that as a diversion to incarceration. So you can't force somebody to do the work crew, but if they choose to do that opposed to serving their time, then that is still available, and that could be why you struggle with getting people to engage in that program, because it's no longer forcible.
Got it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Zach.
That was a good one. Mine was off, right? A couple questions. Again, the street tree program for maintaining, pruning, adjusting the downtown streets budget is in there. It's always a question if it gets done. What do you think the opportunity is for it to get done this year?
Well, the street tree program?
The pruning and adjustments of the downtown street trees.
Well, it's mostly a reactive program. We did do a street tree planting earlier this year. I think we did 16 street trees. We'll do another one this fall. Typically don't like to plant trees too late in the year, in the spring, because it's really problematic to keep them alive. We've got one project online to work around the First Presbyterian Church to do some pruning on 2nd Street.
Okay. Second, all the way back to the changes in the fund, forgive me the term, the
fund exchange.
Fund exchange, thank you very much, and that drying up, as well as just our already underfunded street maintenance program. Will the new TSP look at radically changing and improving the way in which we continually fund those to both pick up where the fund exchange left off, as well as pick up with things that we don't charge for now that we should be charging for to take care of the streets on a better clip?
Probably a little outside my reach. Typically, TSPs don't look at operational funding pieces. They're more transportation system planning pieces and capital development, those sorts of things. I look at the way we fund transportation here as kind of a two-legged monster. The street fund really focuses on the operational piece, traffic operations, street trees, lights, signage, pavement markings, that sort of thing. Transportation fund really deals more on the system side of it. So I've not seen a TSP that covers that, but I could be wrong.
It's something we can explore when we get to that point of writing the RFP. We'll certainly be looking at SDCs with the transportation plan.
But SDCs won't go towards maintenance.
Those can only.
Say that again?
SDCs cannot go towards maintenance.
Okay, yeah, so I think including maintenance and continuous improvement funding models in that TSP, I think would be a critical piece of that plan.
Right, and one of the approaches that we can consider taking that's not really related to the TSP, but as the TSP identifies capital projects, we can explore alternative construction and alignment methods that take into account life cycle costs, and sometimes you can design improvements that have lower maintenance costs. One example is roundabouts are easier to maintain than traffic signals and cheaper to construct as well. And so we may be able to work with design and construction features that would have a mitigating impact on ongoing maintenance.
Very good. The Safe Routes to Schools grant you were awarded for Sue Buell work, confirming that's along that stretch of doom there by the dog food mill to get kids safely along there to a sidewalk along there, is that correct?
What it is, what it will be is there'll be a multi-use pedestrian style pathway, an asphalt pathway that will live on top of the bank between the drainage ditch and the fence line.
Oh, okay.
On Booth Bend Road.
On Booth Bend. That'd be
Booth
on
Bend, yeah.
North side of the
Stretch of
roadway.
doom, Booth Bend.
And there'll be a crossing at the Horizon Cooperative that will allow those kids to cross from that point. It'll be a protected crossing with rapid flashing beacons and advanced warning and the whole deal.
And the grant's funding that work?
Correct.
Last we sat down, and I think you just are applying for that or waiting to hear back. So congratulations on getting that. That is a very needy community over there, and to take the safety of those kids that likely have to walk to school is pretty serious. And so I think that's going to be a huge benefit.
Pure blind luck. It's the first grant. I just figured out it's the first grant I've written since 1991.
Well, it's a huge congratulations. I think that's going to be a big win for us and the school district as well to get those kids to school safe. And then my plug also for the creation of the CIP plan. I can't wait till we get that going. And then also thanks for the inclusion of the facilities manager. I think that's also going to be huge. So good work this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think Victoria had her hand up.
It's okay, I'm good.
Sure. So been conversation about bringing on an arborist at some point, and then are there any possibilities with Tree City USA, and having been a Tree City USA for so many decades now, do they provide any type of support to keep their programming going?
I don't know the answer to that, but that's definitely worth looking into. And we have talked about having an arborist on board someday. I don't know if we are ready for that now, but I think that's really a good idea.
It's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Does McMinnville Light have a staff arborist, or it's a contracted arborist?
What's that?
Does McMinnville Light have a staff arborist or a contracted?
Everything's contracted.
Right.
And it's tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've contracted for arborists too. Yeah.
Are you saying tremendous in cost, or?
Tremendous in the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, because, you think about those arborists are keeping all the lines clear
Right.
around all of the wires on all of the poles. So it is a year-round ongoing contract. And I forget the number that it's to, but it is high. It is definitely a six-figure number.
Yeah, because they're tied into the Electrical Brotherhood union most of the time because they're working around high voltage wires. So you have that risk factor. It's one of the highest work comp payrolls to maintain.
What we would most likely be looking at is a municipal arborist position that would do some of the work. I would envision that most of the work would still either be done by a combination of contractors and crew. where the municipal arborists would really help us. As we've grown as a community, our tree issues have gotten more and more numerous and more complicated. And having that dedicated staff person to do the inspections, to work with the neighbor on how to plant the tree, where to plant the tree, when to plant the tree would be really doggone useful.
Well, I'd be in support of that in future budgets.
Me too.
Notice.
My question actually tags right into the tree work. And maybe some of it's been addressed because I haven't been able to walk around there because it's so wet. Airport Park, ever since we had the very large ice storm, has a tremendous amount of trees that are down. And at this point, I would say that I would assume that it's more of a growing fire danger, especially with us trying to develop more around that area. Have we looked at what could be done out at Airport Park to address the sheer volume of trees that are down there?
Well, we haven't specifically in the next year you're looking at. We have money set aside to do replanting out there, and part of that work will be to clear up the areas like that. You know, some of those in those natural areas fall is just part of nature, but where you have to assess it for fire damage or fire danger for sure. And that'll be part of that process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Sounds like we don't have a definitive plan to go clean it up right now.
Correct.
But it actually doesn't need a whole lot more trees. It's one of the best places to go on a really hot day, actually. So, okay, thank you.
So I do have a question. Where there will be a traffic signal at Baker Creek Road and Michael Book Lane, is that the plan?
We don't know for
Personally
sure
personal
yet.
question, by the way.
Right. We don't know for sure yet, but it looks like that may be the case. We are waiting for the analysis on that.
There's a line item, 450,000 for a signal.
Right.
And I can attest.
We're assuming it's going to be required.
Yeah. I can attest, I live at the end of Crimson Court, and getting out on to Baker Creek Road, the way that we're configured with Michael Lane, is really dangerous.
Okay.
And trying to make a left-hand turn, especially during high school drive time, it's astonishing the difficulty of congestion that's created because of the way that our street and Michael Book Lane are aligned. It's really very difficult. And there will be an accident there because it's just difficult.
Yeah, we'll try to prevent that.
Hopefully not involving me, by the way.
Pavement condition index, that's something that Mike Bissett used to bring up, and yourself, Mr. Renshaw. It looks like we're still continuing to underfund that, and we've seen that bell curve kind of now start to decline at a more rapid pace than it did when I first started following the city budget a decade ago. And that was even with the bump from the 2014 transportation bond. So I'm more calling that out just so the budget committee is aware that, you know, we currently underfund that by about $1.2 million a year. And I would definitely like to keep our roads in as good a condition as they are now or better. Roads eligible for slurry seal called out in this budget is only 57%, and that used to be up in the high 60s. And our PCI is below 70% right now. So I think last year it was at 69, and this year it's at 66. So unless we want to make significant large investments in the not so distant future, I think it's time for us to really consider funding the slurry seal program and other pavement maintenance and make it a priority.
Adam, it seems to me that we're on a continual downward trend in terms of funding roads because of the reduction in gas taxes. That's assuming that we're able to prevent the reallocation of funds away from bridges or to bridges away from roads. I think in a future budget, we probably ought to think about a dedicated city level funding stream for roads that's specific to that. Because I just think that it's going to be hard to pull it out of other areas in the budget. So there's probably some options for that maybe staff could come back to us with next year.
I know there was a lot of focus on the exchange funds from ODOT. I went to a ODOT presentation a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about the plethora of money that they have available for cities. I'm not kidding. That was the meat of the presentation. It was a lunchtime session at, what your state agencies want you to know about them, what your state agencies want cities to know about them. And the rep from ODOT got up there and said, we have so much money, you just have to figure out how to get it out of us.
So it's grant money?
Yeah. Primarily, but there was, I'm sorry, I didn't take great notes. It was a lunch session. I was just like, oh, ODOT has money. Okay, good, note that. But I do have the app from the conference on my phone, thanks to Scott, so I could probably go back and find the rep from ODOT and send it over, but they
That would
did
be great.
talk about it.
Yes, please do. We'd love to look into that. Thank you.
I want some money. It's gonna be the day, right? Any more questions?
David.
Oh, sorry. Any more questions on transportation, roads? Hearing none?
All right. I really only have one more slide, so wastewater is one slide. Priorities for this coming fiscal year. We plan to meet or exceed all the requirements of our National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, the NPDES permit. And we are working with DEQ for renewal of said permit, which has been administratively extended since 2008. We're working on the solids capacity improvement project, which council approved recently the contract for, and that is going to begin construction very soon. The master plan updates, we're working on the water reclamation facility and conveyance system updates. We're also working on the administration space needs analysis and what to do with the old treatment plant. And we are working on installing a standby generator at the Cozine pump station. Those are the highlights for wastewater. So if anyone has any questions, Leland and I are here to help.
Any wastewater questions?
If you haven't taken a tour, you should.
Yes, the tour is highly recommended. Councilor Payne and I did that together, and we had a lot of fun.
There was talk about making our waste pelletized, I think was the term, or drying it. Are we anywhere down that path, or is that still pie in the sky dreaming? Or
We've looked into it some. I think we were going to follow up with Mayor Drobkin. We haven't done that yet, but we got some information from our engineer Jacobs about it and some recommendations. So we need to follow up with more information about that.
I just know about July or August we'll start getting those why does the town smell emails. So
Can I ask?
figured I would ask that question now.
That's part of what we're going to be doing with our solids capacity improvement project, right, Leland? Things are going to smell better.
He's referring to biochar, right?
Biochar, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
We clarify water every day.
You're on it, Zach.
Yeah, so what you referred to is the biochar process, and with the solids expansion we're doing right now, that's going to improve our process and actually improve the odor of our product that goes out on the field. Presently, right before this whole planning process started, we went to a facility up in Washington that has the same type of digester system that we presently have, and they converted to the new system that we're moving towards. And you could actually set up on top of their tanks, and they turned off their odor control system, and you could hardly even notice the smell. So we're very hopeful that those odor complaints will be very limited in the future. And this new process also sets us up so if in the future, regulatory-wise or a decision of the council or our city, we can move to a biochar type product right off of this current system that we're developing.
Any more questions?
Had two good jokes. I can repeat.
Good. Huh?
That was the third one, right? Two good jokes? You got the third one, right?
Well, hearing no more questions, I can just say thank you. I think we're,
Thank you all.
thank you very much.
Was going to take off to planning's comments about how they deal with the 3 Ps. Well, so do we.
There you go.
He got you, Zach. He got you one, and he got you two.
Oh. Well, I see Susan coming back. Given I'm reading the room, and I think a 5-minute break might be in order. So I will declare a 5-minute break.
Recording stopped.
Zach, there's actually $450,000 for a signal at Baker Creek and Michael Brook Lane. It's right in there. I've been doing a lot of work with, I forget who it is with the city. And that's what he got. And so when I saw it, it's in there. 2 years ago, he was coming out in the budget for us. And that's really exciting because that is a very
That's when Baker Creek North went in.
You know why that's
No.
We submitted a proposed design for that street, continuing Michael Brook Lane straight across.
As it gracefully should.
And that way we would allow for connectivity to that all the way. And Rick said, no, you don't want to do it that way. So this is the way you do it. And since he was the planning director, this is the way he suggested.
Stupid.
Yeah. And so a few years after that,
They offset that whole thing.
it upset the whole program. Yeah. So fast forward about 3 or 4 years, I was sitting in my back and Dan Upton and Tom Davidson, they live in Baffin, and they said, we were just told the city wants to put the road back. And I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah, it's because of the way the Crimson Court got built. And so I called up Bob Payne, who was on the city council. I said, Bob, here, this is what happened. And we were told, and Rick said, yeah, nothing to do with it. And Bob,
So everyone, all the cars that drive straight through into that brick wall are all in his hands too.
We had, I mean, I wouldn't say I had one problem. Really, that's just and the issue was, because there was the continuation of Michael Lane was really an easement that went back to the property of Tom and Sue Davidson and Jenny Upton. If you look at an aerial, yeah, that's the hard part. Crimson Court is the hard part.
Good.
Yeah, Nancy and I developed this back in the day.
Wow, okay, cool.
And but that is the history of why there's no connectivity in all of those streets back there. It was Rick Heisman. So there you go. And it was like,
It doesn't make any sense.
it does not make any sense. It was not supposed to be that we were going to have the street originally connected out and then connect to what would have been a continuation of Michael Brook Lane. It could have been T past it with the city streets going back. And so, because of that, like for us, to walking there, we have to, we should be able to walk back on quiet streets. And we all have to walk to our neighbors, to our friends, a quarter-mile away. We have to go out
On the
onto
screen and
Baker
busy highway,
Arterial Road, which is screaming by, and very unpleasant place to walk, and then you have to turn back. And they're only 2
They're actually about 100 yards away from us. Kids, safety, pedestrian friendly, bike friendly. Anyway, there you go. Yeah, it was, that was, when we did that, there had not been a subdivision developed in McMinnville. Because this goes back to, for about 10 years. There was a pretty significant recession in 1980. And so there were literally no new subdivisions until we did Crimson Court. And we were actually looking at the lots. So we did that subdivision, and we priced our lots at $25,000.
Sure, that was a premium penny.
And real estate agents said, you will never sell or buy anything for $25,000.
We were having a good time.
But can you believe? I mean,
Yeah. You smoked.
I know.
Now there's a lot of stuff. Well, there's that one Michael book up for $320. You see that? Well, he's not gonna do that.
Well, and the lots across the street that they are nothing but, I live up on 2nd and Valley's Edge. I bought there 4 years ago, one of the first houses on Valley's Edge on Northwest. So they built that road up over the top. We listened for 3 months to jackhammers, taking that down. So there's nothing up there that's volcano. $170,000 a pop.
So the lot for that, is that the one on Michael Book Lane across from the golf course?
Yeah.
They're asking
What's going there?
Yeah, that private guy. No, he's got his own sign in the yard.
Right, yeah, for sale by
$325,000.
It's
The dirt.
It's on Michael Book Lane across.
The dirt. Just a nice old growth oak there for that.
The one that
The
they
only
just,
one with no house. The one with no house.
the one that has a bunch of trees, or the one they just ripped out?
No, the one that has a bunch of trees. Yeah, Rudy's put a tiny house in it. Or
I'm gonna try to round up the crew here.
I'll have one easy. We're selling for $325.
You're sitting back. I don't need this big a house. It's very wide. Yeah. 2,400 square feet. But we've been living all over the world, and we've had 2 storage units, artwork, antiques, families. We needed that house with the 3-car garage that I can't park a car in because we had to get everything out so we could decide how we're going to get rid of it.
Right. Storage units are one of the worst things that happen in our society. They're terrible. It's just people, it's like if you have too much stuff. I mean, it's different if you're moving all over. There are time and place, but the fact that people can just move things and then just pay. I mean, we have a family friend bought a house in like the 80s. He's a millionaire.
Yep.
Just,
Susan wants to get.
oh, like, what is it? You know, my mom one time told me, wait, that's how they have their money?
Well, it's like, my business partner, Mary Beth, always laments, I wish somebody would have told me aside in high school and said, go into garbage. And it's also like storage, go into storage.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I don't see a response, though.
No, I did.
You got our attention.
Saving my fastball for last.
Parts.
Is her
I'm ready, Susan? You ready? I'm ready.
She's ready to
All
go.
right, she is ready. I think we're back on the record now, and I think we're proceeding with parks.
Correct. You've made it this far. I am the last department. I think last year at this time, it was about 9:30 on the second night, and you decided, should we let Susan go tonight, or should we stop and come back tomorrow? And you let me go, so we're earlier than we were last year, so.
We're good.
I'm Susan Muir. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director, and tomorrow, this is very appropriate because Saturday we have our alien abduction dash, so we put a photo up from one of our previous events. So in Parks and Rec, we basically have 4 programs. We run the Aquatic Center, the Community Center, the Senior Center, and then Rec Sports. And then a little bit of my time goes to Park Development, which is out of Fund 50. So next slide, who's running it? Ooh, that's tiny. Ooh. So lots of successes, so many I had to make it super tiny. Let me tell you what we did this year. It's been an exciting year for us in Parks and Rec. We launched the PROS plan, which stands for Parks Recreation Open Space Master Plan Update. So we're taking the 1999 PROS plan and updating that. We're making sure that we ground it in equity and also something that you've been talking about with other departments, make sure it's financially sustainable. What we found through that is we had some old data. We were not fully up on the city's GIS system. We are now. It took a little bit longer than we expected because of that. And last week we visited with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Committee. They're serving as our community advisory committee on this plan, and we started updating the vision of the PROS plan. So it's pretty exciting. If anybody wants to get more information about that, they can go to McMinnvilleParksPlan.com, and we are going to be back at City Council at the end of June to give you an update on the PROS plan. It's very exciting. We've been talking to the community a lot about that. Some other successes we have had are related to program and partnership growth. And if you remember the Phase 1 feasibility study and then the MacPac project, we started off on some new programming after we heard back from our community what they'd like to see out of their Parks and Rec department. And as part of that, we also were, through those documents, planned to formalize some of our partnerships to try and bring new players into our buildings and maybe even finance components of it. So what we've done, we received $20,000 in scholarship money this year from Cascade Steel. We were really grateful for that, and that has been an awesome opportunity for those who have a financial barrier to participating in our programs. We partner with Visit McMinnville on a Quarry Park feasibility study to determine whether or not that might be a good location for a bike park, and that's been a fun project. We updated and formalized our sponsorship program so it's more structured now, and we also are working with our local businesses and bringing a little bit more money in because of that as well. And then this is probably one of the coolest things that we have to announce this year. The City Council heard this about a month ago. It's not in your budget document, so we'll have a plus $129,000 in the updates that come to you before final adoption. The mayor mentioned yesterday that we can tell that we touch community members in ways that we don't know at the time when we are left things like endowments. And the senior center was left an endowment of $129,000 for senior programming. And so we're really excited to roll that out. And it just is really meaningful. We touch people every day, and we don't realize sometimes the impact we have on people's lives until much later. So that's pretty cool. And also another revenue source for us. So some of the new programming that we've been doing, we are really leaning into adaptive recreation. We've done new programs this year, including soccer. We've had family hangouts, basketball, gymnastics, baseball, and softball. During those events, especially the hangouts, we invite the families, and we listen and learn a lot from our community members about how we can meet people where they're at with the rec programming, particularly related to those that might have physical or emotional barriers to participation.
We're also excited that we have 174 free and fun programs through Summer Fun. Summer Fun is a huge partnership for us. We partner with the library. They're our primary partner, and then we have a number of community partners, social service agencies, and others that really help us put that Summer Fun program on. And if you remember, that really came out of COVID, when we were trying to get people outdoors and make it through that weird first summer that we were in. The other new programming that we're doing, futsal, been launching that at the community center. Kayaking at the pool, we've had some interest in water polo and are trying to get that going. Got a new shuffleboard court for the senior center. We're ramping up kids volleyball and some new fitness programs and other things. So we're really happy to be looking at how we can provide more and different services to our community. And then we also worked on outreach and connections. As you know, ARPA funded a mobile rec station, and with luck, it will be at next week's community fair. So it's getting wrapped right now, and we hope to debut it there. We're super excited. That will allow us to take our programming to different areas in town that might not be able to make it to a park or might not be able to make it to one of our facilities. So we're really excited about that. We also redeveloped our scholarship program to allow it to be more transparent and consistent across our entire department. We used to administer scholarships separately through each of our programs, and now we have one person in our department that can be a liaison to families. So it's a better program for those people that need to participate in it. We actually don't have the conversations at the front desk anymore. We'll bring them back into an office and talk to them about what we can do to help them afford our programming. We continue to work with our partners at Mac Water and Light, McMinnville School District, and Linfield about property acquisitions and those potentials of partnering on a new building. We're formalizing partnerships through memorandums of understandings and getting clear on what we are committing to deliver with our partners and what they will be committing to delivering for us. And this next piece is one of the things that I'm most proud of in our department. We are literally going door to door in our community to try and bring people into our programs. This is something that was started with Summer Fun, and when we did that to go out to get people to fill out the survey for the Parks and Rec Open Space Master Plan update, they recognized us. And they saw Parks and Rec coming, and that was the result of a lot of hard work and making a lot of connections. So we go to a mobile home park and knock on doors and leave flyers, or we'll go to some multifamily housing and do the same, and that's been a great thing to see people recognize either our blue t-shirts or our staff or somehow know we're coming. We also started doing a volunteer spotlight in our rec guide. If this didn't come in your mail today, it's probably going to come tomorrow or maybe Saturday. But this new summer guide includes our second volunteer spotlight. You talked a lot about volunteers through the budget. We have over 200 in McMinnville, Parks and Rec, and the last 3 nights I've been welcoming and thanking the volunteer coaches for our baseball and softball programs, and it's just great to see everybody come into that volunteer program. And then we also have been expanding opportunities for seniors to get discounted rates. So if we've brought in, we've had Silver and Fit, Silver Sneakers, and then there's another one. We've seen a boom in seniors coming in because of that. So they're able to get their insurance to reimburse us for a portion of their fees, and it's been fantastic. So we're seeing a lot of increases in that, if anybody's interested. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, awesome.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And then our priorities for next year, master planning, I mentioned that. We're doing the parks and the buildings. So as you know, we've been having some conversations about a new rec center. We were putting that on the back burner while we were working through some of the fire district and other financial situations that you are teeing up for us to be successful, but we're ready to get that going. We know our top priority is obtaining the right site. We also know we need to right-size the concept plan. That's the plan that MacPac recommended. That was the dream big scenario, which was great and amazing. And if we have partners available to help us with that, that might be a part of the conversation. But if not, we know we need to shrink the footprint a little bit, both financially and physically, to make that building both right-sized for our community to support through funding with a capital bond or whatever, and also the right size for us to be able to operate and maintain it, because as Ann mentioned, we are currently in one of the oldest buildings in the city at the community center, and so we're excited to maybe move into a new one. And then really connecting the two, the parks plan and whatever we end up doing with a potential new building, connecting those together so that we can truly understand and see across our community, where are we serving our community and where do they need service that they're not currently getting. So through that, we're also removing barriers to participation. We'll continue that. We really are learning a lot from our community. We're challenging ourselves. As I mentioned, we are doing whatever we can to get more people into our programs. And then we're excited, you might have seen a little bit of capital money in the senior center. We're excited to do a restroom update. That was part of the facility study to expand and kind of modernize the restrooms over there. And then outreach and connections, we're going to continue to work on that. We also want to have some measures and data about how people see the guide and how they read it and where they access information, because we still hear, oh, I didn't know about that. If I'd only known about that program, I would have done it. And so we want to try and figure out, okay, how do we talk so that more people will hear about our programs? And then we need to continue to tell our story. And over the last several months, there's been some negative stories about a lot of different things, and we have a lot of positive things to say, and so we really want to change that narrative back to all the awesome things that Parks and Recreation does, so we're looking forward to that. Okay, so these are our challenges. You've heard a lot about this too. The need for capital funding. Property acquisition and project timing is something that we're thinking really closely about right now. We're sort of tied to some buildings that are a little bit of a ball and chain. We know we need new facilities to increase our potential for revenue and services. Maximizing the memberships right now, our memberships at the Aquatic Center and the Community Center don't really talk to each other. In one new facility, we know we would have a much better turnout and a much better financial setup with ultimately memberships. The pro forma that was written for the feasibility study also shows that building being open 105 hours, 7 days a week. Just to give you an idea of that, the most hours our buildings are open, I think, is the Aquatic Center, and it's about 75 hours a week. So we would be looking at really expanding that and thinking that will bring us in some more revenue as well. The other challenge is the current buildings. We are keeping them going. We are keeping them going. And you've heard that the staff that do the programming and lifeguard are our building managers right now, and they're doing a great job of really keeping them going. We also know we're losing out on some potential cost recovery with the condition of our buildings in terms of rentals and other things. We're also a little worried. One of our challenges may be we're losing some community momentum that came out when MacPac was making their recommendation. We had a lot of support. There was a lot of talk about it in the community, and it's been a while, so we need to make sure we harness that and get that back up and going. And then, as I mentioned, the community culture and values sometimes play out at our front desks and in our programs, and you've heard about camping programs and dealing with homelessness in our community. I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know, having the values and the work through MacTown 2032 and even the proclamations that the City Council does really helps us as staff for backstops to let the community know whenever they question anything that we're doing. We say, here's how this came about. Let me trace this back to you to show when the City Council directed us in this way. Let me show you how we are supported by this. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say we actually use those things at our front counter, and we really appreciate having that, that backstop and that backup. Another thing that we're learning, and we heard this through the survey with our community, equity and inclusion means something different to everyone, and talking about and understanding our differences and what that means and how we serve people equitably and be inclusive. Those words came to mean different things, particularly when our consultant was doing some of the focus groups. We learned that we may be thinking equity means financial, and somebody else might be thinking equity means something completely different in terms of accessibility. So we think we can work a little bit on getting on the same page about our community so that we have the same expectations on that. You've heard a little bit about park safety and cleanliness. That's a challenge for us. It's been a challenge, and we hope that that changes. We will be looking at some of the financial structures for those, for the ongoing operations through the Parks and Rec Open Space Master Plan, but that is a big challenge for us. And then you heard this last night, staff recruitment, retention, and also making sure we have a staff that reflects our community is really important to us. And we try hard at that, and we are a big employer. We're hiring 14-year-olds now because we need staff to come into our programs. We have umpires that are multi-generational. We have 2 sets of fathers and sons umpiring for us. We have 1 father and a daughter umpiring for us. We have an uncle and a nephew umpiring for us. So there's a real tradition of bringing folks in through getting their first work experience in Parks and Rec, and we're thrilled to have them all. So having said that, I think my last slide, Jenny started us off by talking about stability, and I also want to just talk a little bit about that. Some of the things that stability provides us, allows us to give, and you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Allows us to really provide stability for our community. So thinking about changing the sound bites and being positive with what we do, I just wanted to let you all know that we just finished our spring soccer season and had the highest registration that we have in over 2 decades, or about 2 decades. We had 900 families participating in that program. We have over 700 families starting baseball and softball at the beginning of June down at Joe Dancer. I mentioned we're an excellent multi-generational employer, and we look forward to continuing that. We're amazing at programming and doing a great job of rolling a lot of things out. You may know this, but we just had a staff person inducted into the McMinnville High School Hall of Fame. Go Jason, for all of his work in swimming in our community, and he's been a great leader in that regard. We love our seniors. This is National Older Americans Month, and if you go over to the Senior Center right now, you'll see how we plan on recognizing them and showing them that we really care about them and bring them into our programs. We will see thousands of you over the summer. In the last 2 summers, we have provided services for over 10,000 people. We're really proud of that number. Yeah, exactly. And then with all of the planning work we're doing, we're just really looking forward to creating a vision for our community, with our community, and making a plan to carry that out over the next year. So we're very excited about that. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. And I hope there will be questions.
Susan, I read that book front to back every time I see it. Thank you very much. Silly question, though, because I haven't been here in the history of your department, but your FTEs are going from 40 to 36 to 24. How can you run your department like that?
Well, we're tight. I'm not going to lie. The management staff is on Zoom right now. Rob Porter, who runs the pool, has been on the deck lifeguarding recently because we don't want to shut the building down. But we also adjust accordingly. So when COVID happened, we laid off a bunch of employees. We base our FTE based on how many participants we have in programs, so we're a little bit more flexible, but we still have some growing back to do to where we were before COVID. So. And we really are adjustable except for the pool. We have to have a minimum number of staff on the deck, no matter how many people are in the pool. But otherwise, we can adjust pretty easily to the number of people we have in our programs.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a few questions for you. The $20,000 in scholarship from Cascade Steel, do you expect that to be ongoing, or is it a one-time thing?
I'm not going to say we won't ask for it every year, but I don't believe it will be ongoing with certainty. But they are very much a partner with us and talking to us about other ways we can partner together, but that was a one-time contribution.
Another, I guess this is more of a comment. The adaptive programming is so inspiring and exciting, and my family doesn't get to take part in it, but whenever I see the advertising, I think it's so wonderful that it can be provided, and I don't know who to share it with, but I want to share it with everyone because it's just amazing that you guys are providing that. And then another question with the senior center gift, can that only be used for programming, or can it be used for improvements on the building?
So the endowment came with programming to serve seniors. And there are no family members left, so we were working with the agency that was distributing the funds and trying to figure out how best to use that. And we're really excited about that. Erin Gwynn will be thinking about that, but really we're looking at how to roll programs out specifically for seniors with that money.
Thank you.
And is the city going to honor the donor in some fashion?
What was that question?
Is the city going to honor the donor in some fashion? That's a substantial gift.
Yes, and I know when I announced this at council, the mayor asked me the same thing, who can we send a thank you to? And we really, there is no family for
Maybe
this.
some kind of plaque or permanent memorial.
Yeah, maybe at the senior center.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a very generous gift.
Zach?
Thank you, Susan, for the report. Then the work, in there you beautifully tee up the sort of next steps positioning for not only the MacPac facility, but what will be in the plan for the output of the PROS plan. And you mentioned sort of land acquisition for parks that might be there and included in that plan, as well as whatever facility we're able to keep working our way forward on, whether it's one of the 2 recommended sites by the community group of MacPac, or another site that is only avails itself to us. How does this budget position us to move on any of those pieces that may come up in the intervening time between now and then, to not let us miss out on an otherwise golden opportunity?
Yeah, and Jennifer can probably jump in here too about potential ways to fund acquisitions if we need to. Like she does with the urban renewal, Jennifer encouraged us to put a little bit of money in Fund 50 in the contingency line item, so there's a little more flexibility there. Once we look at the system development charge methodology as part of the PROS plan, we'll know if we can use any of that money to put into a new building or how we might use that, but I'm guessing Jennifer would point us towards some sort of interfund loan or other option for purchasing property.
I mean, the thought of purchasing property, I just see massive dollar signs. So it's all in context, right? So, I mean, we'd have to have.
We can do it.
But there is that. We can do it. We will figure out the methodology, so.
Basically, it's the decision of the city council, how to fund that and where that funding would come on, and whether or not we would purchase something. Is that fair?
Very good. Also, I see the Kids on the Block fund has trickled out to many zeros on the right-hand side. Are you able to comment on how that transition is going and to being?
Yeah. Next fall will be the final year of us administering the contract for McMinnville School District. We currently have an intergovernmental agreement. We basically lease or rent the space and then sublease it out to Campfire to provide those services. When we entered into that intergovernmental agreement a year and a half ago, we let the school district know we were planning on being out of that business by the end of the 3rd year of the intergovernmental agreement. So we've been working with them and the different liaisons for that and check in quarterly on that. And every time we check in, I let them know we are ending that 3-year, that's our plan, and that was what we charted when we evaluated KOB.
Thank you.
I would also just add, we wanted to be clear when we entered into that, we didn't want to leave anybody hanging, and that's why we offered to continue to administer that. So we'll keep working on that relationship with McMinnville School District and make sure that we're good partners.
One thing I've been thinking of is we've started a good working relationship with the school district and the school board, this group, and the school board has started a routine of meetings, and I believe if it were to volley back, it would be hosted by them and a topic maybe more theirs, but wonder, it seems that maybe they've wanted to shy away from some of those discussions perhaps, or we just haven't dove into that topic specifically. Wonder if at the next joint meeting it wouldn't be a relevant conversation for the community to be able to hear with that group and this group what that plan is, with ample time to make plans for how to either continue on, how the community can either continue on realizing that service, whoever's providing it, whether the school district would choose to retain Campfire or make an alternate move, or we not at all offer the service with ample time to make decisions.
Talk to the superintendent about the agenda with that.
Very good.
I had a question. Lots of our students come from surrounding areas, communities. I was just wondering if we had any idea of the people that take advantage of the Parks and Rec, how many come from the surrounding community?
We do have some data related to that. I could pull that for you. We really looked at it when we were doing the analysis of whether or not we should construct a new building. And the consultant looked at whether or not we should do a district by expanding the authority of the city into a larger district, and they found that for our demographics, we would need a population of about 60,000 in order to make that financially work, and there just isn't that pull for us. I would say it's very big for our free programs that we get a lot of outside attendees, and less so, obviously, for our paid programs. But I could get that data for you.
Okay, and the reason why I was kind of asking that was, do we ever see monies come in from the county for our programs to subsidize kind of a regional park program?
I mean, we partner with the county on a lot of things. They don't hand us cash per se to buy down basically the out of district or out of town costs on things, but I think that's part of what we've learned through all of the planning that we've done is how important those partnerships are. And so if we go and approach them and let them know we'd be open to that kind of thing, once we have the final financial plan for a new building, for example, it might be worth it for us to say, here's basically a buy down cost for the surrounding areas, and if they wanted to participate in that, maybe they would be able to be a partner.
Okay, thank you.
That model does happen sometimes up in the Portland area.
Thank you. I'm probably missing it somewhere, but I don't see fuel for the Recmobile, the Mobile Recmobile.
It is probably in Rec Sports, which is where we have the one single pickup truck. My guess is we sort of merged the fuel into one, but that's what I think, if I recall correctly.
Okay. And then I'm really glad to see the increase in the aquatic center repairs, maintenance, and whatnot. I do have a question about chemicals, just based on the last conversation that I had with Rob when he very kindly donated some of his time to give me a tour of the aquatic center. Very interesting process. Is there issues getting chemicals? There's been so many complications just with consumable goods, so I was just concerned about the access of those chemicals and the ability to get them.
We have had a scare with chlorine availability in the last couple of years when the supply chain issues were large, but we went ahead and bought a back stock of chlorine so we would not run into any problems, but we did account for basically a cost of inflation in our budgets for materials, and hopefully we'll be able to keep them consistently coming in, but that could happen to us.
All right, thank you.
Questions anymore? Seeing none, I think we're done. You're done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would just give personal congratulations to the senior center staff. We had a family event there in December. They were incredible. I wish I remembered her name. She was terrific.
Probably Erin or Patchouli.
It was Erin.
Yeah, Erin's online right now. Thank you, Erin.
And then we've actually, our family is having a reunion at the senior center in July because it just fit the December event so well. So, yeah, it's a great facility.
Great, thank you.
I would move to cancel the May 19th, 2023 Budget Committee meeting.
Second.
Any opposed? I'll start with the opposed. How about those in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like the ayes have it. Any comments from the Chief of Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Thanks to the committee and thanks to the whole team for their presentations the last 2 nights. We would encourage you to spend some time tonight deliberating, if you will, and that will help us bring to you whatever we need to for final action on June 16th. To set that up, Jennifer mentioned briefly that we've already identified a few changes to the proposed budget that we would recommend, and so we'd like to give Jennifer the chance to walk you through those handful of changes in a more deliberative way than we were able to do last night. We would encourage the committee to spend some time deliberating and hopefully come to a consensus, and then when we bring you back in June, we would look to be a relatively short action meeting. Certainly up to the Budget Committee. I would say that the information is fresh in your minds now, and you might have a more effective deliberations if you were to spend some time tonight doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good idea.
So go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, great. So I had put at everyone's table an updated version of its schedule. It's called City of McMinnville FY24 Proposed Budget Update, the fire district approved by voter scenario with the 5/17 date. So I'll run through those, and then there are 2 additional ones that I'd like to add to the list. So the first is a fairly modest increase in the police department for a market-based salary increase that was needed there. Then in park. For the record, that would be $25,879 added to the police department's budget. In park maintenance, I failed to add the greenlit additional amount for the splash pad work, and so that is included in the in what we propose that you all add, and that's in the amount of $574,900 in addition in park maintenance. ARPA funds will offset that. Of these things, there are only 2 that would affect the ending fund balance. One is the 25,000 and change addition in the police department that would come out of ending fund balance, but everything else, except for over an airport, is covered by other funding. So the next item in the general fund are the transfers. So this is, I discussed briefly, we need to organize the funding source for the new fire district to have those dollars come out of the general fund as opposed to it coming directly out of the wastewater capital where the funds for the loan will originate. So that means an addition in the transfers line of $4,378,426. And then the next line down is special payments. So that is slightly less. So this would be the amount the general fund pays to the fire district so that they'll have the dollars to reimburse us back. And that's $4,287,320. And the reason why there's a slight difference is because we are asking the fire district to pay a slight premium on the dollars because they will no longer be in the city's bank account earning interest. So that's what the difference is. The next fund that's affected by proposed changes is the street fund, and that's $62,000 added appropriation, and that is for a timing issue of projects that were anticipated we'd finish out contracts this year, but they will go in past July 1, so we're moving 62,000. So that's a net change to the bottom line of zero, just the ending fund balance. For this year will be higher, so our beginning balance for FY24 will also be higher, and that's how that's covered. So the airport maintenance fund, that's $20,000 to work on 2 units of the HVAC system on top of the building that Oregon State Police currently leases, and that will reduce the ending fund balance of the airport fund by that amount. Transportation fund, it's an increase in appropriations of $310,000, and that too, it's similar to the street fund. It's contracts that are already underway that we need to, for timing issues, push to next year.
And where do those come out of? Is that
It's
transportation fund?
It's transportation dollars we anticipated to be able to spend by June 30, and we just know we're not going to. So it's just pushed forward for next year. Then the wastewater services fund, it's a more modest amount, but it's the same issue. Contracts this year that will not be completed that we need to move to next year, $33,525. Then the wastewater capital fund, in the program line, the additional appropriations is $1,731,500, and that's a number of contracts that are being taken. We hoped to have gotten completed by June 30. They won't. We're moving forward to appropriations to fiscal year 24. Then you've got the opposite change in wastewater capital for the transfers and special payments. So the negative number is they will no longer be giving the money to the fire district. Instead, it's a transfer of the same amount, $4,287,320, that they will make to the general fund instead. And that's all that's on the page. Then the two additions are in the fire district transition fund. I think Chief Leifert mentioned it yesterday, that the ambulance that's funded by ARPA, we anticipated getting it, months ago. And it's not going to be here by June 30. And so this actually does presume that the council agrees that we should still fund it with the city's ARPA dollars, and that just like all the other assets, they will become the next fire department's assets. But we will need to add an appropriation of $252,000 to be able to get that the appropriations for the ambulance into next fiscal year. So that will just increase the program category of fire district. And then the latest one, I guess flipping back to the general fund, is what Susan mentioned, the $129,000 for the Parks Department for the senior center, this grant. So that will be an added appropriation so that the monies are available to be spent should the planning so design it to go out in an entire year, but it just adds maximum flexibility to use the funds. But it doesn't require that they all be spent out next year.
So are there any questions about those amendments? Go ahead, Scott.
So I completely understand under the wastewater capital fund where the transfer, but then the specialty payment is basically wipes that one out. I would think that would basically be the same on the page before, because right now the changes are 9,266,000, but wouldn't one of those be a payment since we're?
So the first thing on the calendar that will happen is the special payment, the 4,287,000, the same number that was in wastewater. We will pay that to the fire district, so they'll have some cash.
Right.
Then, when they pay the general fund back by December 31st, the general fund will need to transfer to wastewater that loan amount plus the premium. So that's why that number is a little bit larger.
We're just loaning ourselves the money to loan to hand over. So it's just an additional administrative step so that the city is loaning out of its general fund, not out of its wastewater.
Okay.
Originally, the money was going straight from the wastewater capital fund to the fire district.
Yeah,
and there was advice from council that
I completely get that, but when we're looking at what the updated proposal is 9,266,525, but from what I gathered, because of the way the one is done underneath wastewater capital fund, is it negates itself. So you have an in and an out that basically make it zero. And I'm still not quite following how we go from proposed budget of 33,500,989 up to the 42. It's not, we didn't add an extra 4,287,320.
Yeah,
it's like it's there twice in a way. Is how
Right.
I'm reading this.
It's one of the joys of governmental accounting is fund accounting. And when you are budgeting, we are only appropriating the expenses. The revenue, you're not seeing the revenue. And so it does feel like we are overstating the city's cost by doing it this way. But that's just one of the things that's a reality in government accounting, I'm so sorry to say.
it took me 10 years on the budget committee to have that sink in, so.
I understand.
It really did. I mean, it's like, really?
I understand where Scott's coming from, though, because when you look at the proposed budget book and the updated proposal in the wastewater capital fund, we're not looking at, just that 1.7 million that's in the program fund. We're looking where there's still it doesn't come out in the wash. But I also want to clarify, the city is paying an $111,000 withdrawal fee to take money from the wastewater treatment fund?
No.
What's the, okay, so why?
Fire district is paying that.
The differential is $90-something thousand. It's
Okay, so that's backwards. So those two figures are backwards. So the special payment is to the fire district and the transfer is to wastewater.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So wastewater will get a little bit more than it gave us in July when it receives the money back in December, because they didn't have their excess cash sitting in the local government investment pool earning interest at 3.75 right now.
And it's earning back at just over 4%, right?
Right, we bump, on all of our internal borrowing, our practice is to bump it up half a point. So it'll be, the interest we would charge is 4.25. Now, if that number moves in the interim, it's been pretty stable in the LGIP, the local government investment pool, but in the next month, if that moves, to keep wastewater, whole and earning a small premium for this, when I bring the loan documents, that number could change, but.
So that's there's an interest rate that's going to be built into is it an IGA that you're working with then?
Correct, and just from speaking more with Walt about it, we may not identify it as a loan. The de facto interest we may describe as an administrative charge of some sort. So, but we haven't gotten into drafting the IGA yet. So any other questions? And I mean, and this stuff, the city is a very, very complicated financial system. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to spend some time and let's look at things and we can try talking about things in different ways, and maybe, one way of describing it will click. And I'm also just not the most, fluid and articulate person, particularly in, large groupings like this. So if you need a one-on-one with me, I may be able to be a more effective communicator also in that kind of a situation. So please feel free to reach out.
I had 3 questions. So my first is, from an accounting standpoint, I just want to make sure that the endowment can be listed as a grant, because my understanding of accounting, and this is a very limited understanding, but it should not be listed as a grant. So I'm just throwing that out there. I do believe we should proceed with the ambulance and providing that. I'm sorry, those are 2 statements. Back to the wastewater capital fund, there's $40,000 that doesn't line up there.
Oh, have I missed something? Have I gotten them?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, okay, so actually, one of the upsides, looking at,
it's mid-page, page 3, so it's the wastewater capital fund. So when you go, so the 42,878, so the 82, or $4,287,320. So that doesn't wash itself out. So there's a $40,000 like something somewhere. Okay. If you take the updated proposal and the proposed budget book, that's $161,691,500. The change says that's $1,731,500. There's a $40,000 discrepancy.
I must not be on the same page that you're on?
It's page 3 of this.
Oh,
the 517 update of the approved voter scenario. So this change, so this plus this does not equal this.
No.
Oh, so that, okay.
No, this
Oh,
one.
these
Yes, yeah, that, yeah.
Just a thought so that we don't get sunk, looking at this. One of the upsides of delaying the decision-making for another 4 weeks is that we don't have to quickly turn this around. So I can take note of this issue, and I could have absolutely made a mistake in the Excel work, and I'll fix it. Does that work as a moving forward?
That works for me, but I'm getting I'm getting the proposed plus changes equals updated.
So I think it suggests that you kind of maybe review this offline.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm not, I don't care about this.
and then when you come back with an updated version of this, that will be part of the budget motion. And I think that would be, we can, and maybe get it out to us before that, so.
No, absolutely.
So that we can all go through the math and make sure that we're all very comfortable with it.
Art, are you ready for just kind of more general comments on this?
Well, but I did want to just, from a process perspective, we're going to continue to calculate 2 scenarios, because if just something happens, we need to be able to move forward on a budget motion on the 16th. So the status quo will be there as the backup, and I will be sharing both scenarios with the preparation documents, right? And so just my intention would be, if you all agree that these changes are fine, I will also include them, except for the fire district related one, of course, in also the status quo. So I just wanted to put that out there too.
Right, Ed, might help everyone. So what the leadership, the city did, they looked at the calendar, and understanding that the budget committee approves it and it gets passed on to the city council for adoption. And it has to be adopted before the start of the new fiscal year. And so then you start, when is like the drop dead date for the city council to act? You have to build in some time to have notice published in the paper and online. And then you have to go back from there to see when is really the final opportunity for the budget committee to approve the budget. And so you built in that timeline, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. That makes sense.
Do we have a time for that date?
It'll probably be at 6:00 p.m.
It is a Friday, and
Last day of school.
the last day of school.
We were going to be partying at my house with the kids.
We'll discuss and get a timeout. We typically try not to hold special meetings, generally speaking, but when we do try to be very respectful of calendars, and I did not realize it was the last day of school, so we'll talk about if it's more appropriate to start it a little bit earlier. It's never a good time for everybody, so we're going to.
We're mindful of that. We really are. I mean, it's a difficult situation, and it is, and I'll be repetitive here and redundant. It's an unusually unique situation this year, and so that's why we're asking more from the members of the committee than would normally be asked. And we really appreciate, everyone's willingness to, pull one for the team. Any other?
So that's all I have with my additions. So.
Okay. So the next question, anything else from the city manager? Okay, the next question, I think it's important whenever we do a budget committee hearing like this that we go through the room and make sure that all questions that are appropriate at this time get asked, and any comments that you might have. It's a little bit unusual because we usually, when we do that, we follow that immediately with the motion and the vote. I think it's something that the city manager mentioned a little bit ago. It might be a good idea to do that while issues are fresh in your mind. And depending upon how things develop, we may have the opportunity for some additional comments on June 16th, but I think it would be important for everyone to have an opportunity at this point to make ask any questions or make any comments regarding the budget as originally presented and as amended as expected as well. So, I will start with Victoria. Do you have any questions, comments?
Before you do that, can I just clarify that I have fat fingers? And thank you, Scott, for pointing out that I can't type. I'm so sorry for the scare, Jennifer. I was way wrong.
No, accounting, you make mistakes. No worries.
I'm not an accountant. Sorry,
go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, first of all, staff, for the budgets, both of them. A lot of work. And I was really happy to see the facilities management fund in there. I wish that there was more on like the preventative maintenance on the roads. Like I mentioned before, I am really concerned about the planning department or community development fund not being fully staffed with, I think long-term planning is critical and it's hard because there's a lot of immediate needs, but that's something that I think we are just not setting ourselves up for success later if we're fully investing in that. So those are my, in addition to the other comments that I have made, those are in summary my comments that I hope the staffing in the police department as well. I was actually yesterday a lot more optimistic because it sounded like staffing wasn't as much of an issue as it was last year, but then it came up a lot in the presentations today. So that continues to be something, and I know that burnout is a lot and everybody's working really hard, so we need to make sure we keep the people we have happy too. That's all I have.
As always, thank you for preparing 2 budgets for us to read this year. It was twice the joy. Especially with the vote and acknowledging the still hurdle we have to go through to get this to be what we are approving. It was a treat to have a budget that talked about things that we are going to do that are in addition to things that we have previously done. It has been a joyous budget to read through and talk about things we are going to add and improve upon. I am a feaster or a faminer, and I want to do everything all the time, all at once. And so I wish there was a way we put a budget in front of us that topped out all of the core services and we were doing even more, but that's not realistic, and there are things that we still need to do, things that we still need to do better, but what a treat to have a budget in front of us that did things better across the board in little ways. So if we keep doing that year over year, we'll be far down the road on the community we all know we want to live in. I have no huge hanging out questions, little things here and there, but otherwise I think this was a good budget and a good cycle. So thank you for Chair Hart for your leadership in the procedure. Thank you staff for all your effort. And thank you for this committee for the questions.
Jennifer, you make me look bad. I do a budget every year, and it's only 400 pages long, and I feel like you've set the bar up a little bit too high for me, so I got some more work to do. A couple of months ago, as we were getting into the nitty-gritty of the fire district, we had conversations in this room regarding walking away from 1.5% of tax revenue. At that point in time, I made the very specific statement that we are shooting ourselves in the foot, but I went along with it. We are killing ourselves on facilities, our buildings, our labor, to keep within the budget restraints that we gave ourselves. I think that all of the divisions did a phenomenal job in coming up with a solid budget that keeps the city running efficiently. And I think that's great leadership. Mayor, you are doing a great job. Jeff, phenomenal job keeping everything together. But as we go forward for the next 3 years, we're going to have these same conversations every year, and nothing is going to help our buildings any more than getting back a half a point or maybe a point later, or getting those funds back. It's going to be a huge community involvement. We're going to have to get in a lot of people to agree to that extra tax revenue. And I hate to say it, but the Lions Club, or that's all they can talk about is, well, it's going to come back, it's going to come back, and everything's going to go sideways. Well, I got in front of them and a number of those people, and I said, go and look at some of our facilities, go and look at some of the buildings, go and look at the offices where some of the people are working at, and you'll change your mind, because I wouldn't put some of my employees in some of these buildings. So I want to really support the facilities and public works. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Susan, like I said, I read that. I might not join in on much of it, but I read it front to back, even the Spanish parts, because I'm trying to learn Spanish. And that's at my old age, I'm trying to learn Poquito Español. But thank you, everybody, and I'm looking forward to coming back to some more meetings, and June 16th works for me.
Staff, thank you for the great presentations you all had. Definitely have some areas, as I voiced, that I would like us to address and realize the challenge that comes with the need for revenue, or the need to make difficult decisions on cuts for things we currently offer. So I think for me, it's a two-prong approach of, A, what revenues are available, and B, what are things that maybe we just don't have business doing, or we can create some additional capacity in the budget by bringing those things in-house, like the street sweeper or things of that nature. So being on the campaign trail for the fire district for the last, I don't know how long, I definitely want to make sure that we continue to make data-driven decisions that the community informs through their engagement and through polling. And even if there is personal desires to bring revenues back online, I think we owe our promise to our citizens that we made as a budget committee on January 24th to continue to make data-driven decisions. And if we want to be successful in future bond measures and capital improvements within the city long-term, that's the way to do it, even if it doesn't get you the immediate desires you have today.
I want to echo everything Victoria said. I was thinking, so I'm not going to say that all again. So I appreciate what she articulated so clearly. I also wanted to point out that part of what we saw in this budget was because of the hard work that we all worked on with the additional revenue sources. And last year was a little bit more intense because we were still working out some of those details. And I appreciate that how far we've come in the past year. One question I had is the budget committee going to be involved in the public conversation and outreach about the $1.50?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you to all of our department heads, and this is, I'm nothing short of impressed with the preparation of these two very, very thorough budgets. There are some things I didn't bring up in meeting because I've had a chance to flesh them out, but I'm going to touch upon them now. There's, so starting with parks, while you're here, our Parks and Recreation Director knows that on my board in my office, one of my desires is that we bring in a volunteer coordinator into that program, into that department, because I see it as a great multiplier effect. It's been included and then removed, and been included and then removed. When we talk about wanting to maintain our parks and the standard that we want to maintain in our parks, I think that being able to organize and utilize the efforts of the community is really vital to that. We already see those successes, and as noted earlier, however, volunteers take coordination. So I'm not going to advocate to bring that back into this budget. I couldn't find anywhere to pull those dollars from to justify it, but in the future and next year and as we look forward, I think that that's a really important place where we invest. I will third the next year, I hope next year, investment into community development through staffing. I feel two different ways about our facilities. One, yes, we should be maintaining them. I also struggle continuing to put money into facilities that are falling apart when we haven't really designated long-term planning for those facilities. So we talk about this concept that's community-informed concept of the MacPac and what's going to happen, but we haven't had the conversation of, well, but what do we do with the community center? And I understand that some of our investments into that structure this year, even though they're quite large and they're necessary really just to remain operational at this point. And that's I think, throwing good money after bad, or however that goes. But also understand that sometimes that has to happen. Completely support the increase in the police budget as well. I also view that as a multiplier. So these investments in personnel that I am very supportive of, I feel like they all land in that same way. If we have more planners, we're going to be processing more permits, we're going to be bringing in more dollars. We have more people volunteering in the parks, we're going to be getting our parks cleaned up more efficiently and sooner and more consistently, and same as we continue to not necessarily be able to add full sworn officers every year. Being smart with those investments into police personnel, I think, is great. I don't have any requests for changes in this budget. I'll be ready to move on it next month, and thank you again for all of your work. All of your work. I do want to also note that, yes, I will also support the, and do agree with what you said, Director Cuellar, that the city should still purchase the ambulance that we committed to purchasing that is expected to go into the fire district. That is not, nobody should be slighted because the supply chain didn't get that equipment here on time, and we made that commitment, and it was our understanding that those monies would have been spent, and that would have been an asset that we were turning over. So those are my thoughts, and thank you.
Well, first I do want to thank all the staff for excellent information tonight and last night. It was a really good budget session, and I really appreciate it. Thank you to Jeff and Jennifer, especially for a lot of the heavy lifting with the two budgets. Thank you to Jerry and the committee itself. A lot of good questions tonight, a lot of good ideas. First, from my perspective, I see no changes that I would make to this budget. I agree with Zach. It's nice to have a positive budget for a change, whoopee. We do need to do the community outreach. I totally agree, and I think it's imperative that we do it. But I think we need to keep in mind that within the next 2 years, we probably are going to need to use the whole $1.50 for ourselves. We're going to need it. And part of that is to increase personnel in most departments. I'm thinking particularly of police and planning as being two very overtaxed departments. although I'm sure everybody else feels the same way, and I agree with you. I'm just, from my perspective, that was kind of how it hit me. And then also continue to hopefully be able to finally have a built reserve for a while. But thank you all very much.
Jerry?
I absolutely want to echo those comments. I won't bother you with repeating them. I can say I have worked with local government for the last 50 years, and it's hard to even say that. I have never seen a collection of department heads as noteworthy as you all are. It is really an outstanding staff. It helps me understand why the community is the way it is. I don't suggest any changes, and I think my confidence in the staff and the staff work makes it easier for me to say that, because it's such a voluminous document. And this is my first day in the park, so there's a lot of things that I've learned, and I appreciate everybody's civility and cordiality. I really appreciate what I have learned, and I think this was really an extraordinary process. I'm supportive of the budget.
I'm embarrassed to talk again. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I did have one question about the franchise fees related to cable and telephone. Are we going to know before the budget is approved, like before it's voted upon? Like Ziply and Comcast and all that is what I'm...
I actually was starting to draft a staff report on that very subject this afternoon. So we will, I will be giving you an update, I believe, at your first June meeting about where we're at with those issues. But even with the renewal process, it will not come with significant financial differences because we already apply the maximum federal, the federal government allows, so.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you want to get rid of television.
Yeah.
It's done in my house. Whatever you do, it's up to you. We have a great park system. We don't need TV. Or if you're not busy in the park, you can just read the magazine. Other than that, I look forward to hearing what Visit McMinnville has to share regarding the transient lodging tax and community engagement opportunities regarding the $1.50. Thank you for your hard work.
I'm just going to ask a quick question in regards to the transfer in, transfer out, and I do understand that that you have to show both the costs, even though we will have income coming in from that. So in the revenue section, in the resources by type, where would that just fit in that, just so I have a general idea? Because in the explanation on the back page, so looking at page 16, flipping over to 17, like I just don't, I'd assume it's intergovernmental resources or other revenues maybe?
I believe we did put it in intergovernmental. That's this particular one actually could fit in a couple of different categories, but I think we kept all of the monies coming in from the fire district as an intergovernmental category. But if that's different, I will let you all know with the updated paperwork to clarify that. But good question, Scott.
I think that must, so that's the 9.2 it covers that whole 9,266,000, I assume is what you're referring to. Unique to this year, it includes 9.2 million in payments from the new fire district. All right. Maybe I got that wrong. I don't know.
I saw a head nod.
Yeah, we'll confirm that for you.
Cool,
I
awesome.
think that's right as well.
With that being said, I mean, I'm equally as impressed as everybody else is with the work that's done, and will echo everything else that was here. I mean, I have dealt with a lot of budgets and a lot of real type budgets being in restaurants and part of the MDA as well. So every year it was trying to figure out how to get more money and more bang for your buck. So I really am thoroughly impressed. And my community engagement comment, though, would speak to us before we even start talking about this $1.50 is really trying to engage the community to explain what we all just did here. And so they understand that we are using every dollar as wisely as possible. Because there's a lot of chatter, whether you see it on social media or on our, news register's website, that talks about, well, just spend the money more wisely. And I really would like to see us as a community get out this information, whether it be a mailer or some multimedia way of showing, like, we've been working with 50% of staff. That really it would take quite a bit more to get to fully staffed in every single department, and that we encourage our community members to come up with solutions that could help us in our deliberations when it comes to creating a fair and balanced budget. So, but I have nothing to add or take away from that budget, and I'm really happy that I got to be a part of this this experience. So thank you.
I concur with everything that's been said here tonight to the positive. It feels like this is actually a budget that took like 5 years to build.
Maybe 7.
No, really, I mean, because basically what we've been doing is putting in all the different revenue pieces that we needed in order to get to this day. So for me, like, when I was reading through the budget the last 2 weeks, I was like, this is great. This is the product of all of this work that we've been doing for years. I agree with Scott that we need to do a good job of explaining the fiscal situation for the city, but on the other hand, I think the city has kind of shown, thanks to the work of Adam and people, where the needs are, and clearly showed up for funding those needs with respect to the fire district. So I think we're in a really good position for the first time financially since I've been on the council, and I'm looking forward to continuing to add capacity, particularly to parks and the maintenance of those important buildings. So, thanks.
Is Chris still with us?
No, he's not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's been a great process, and again, staff has been wonderful, and they really are good. And I've been on the budget committee for long enough to see what they've done and what they do when resources are limited and when times are stressful, and they really do a good job for all of us, and that's really appreciated. Couple things, I was looking at the add-ins that happened, even though the $150,000 is not being utilized this year, and it's really it's a great credit to the process and to the personnel that were involved in that to get those key items back. If you look at the back of the notebook, there's a whole bunch of more core items that need to be included, and we've talked about it. We heard things that pop out, or some of the things that Chief Scales mentioned, things that were mentioned tonight. And so we need to look hard on that and really be able to articulate that to the community and get the involvement. And there will be naysayers, and there will be people that will make personal insults and will not understand that leadership in the city took pay cuts voluntarily to get us through difficult times. People won't get that. All they'll do is just throw things at us, and it's our job, I think, part of the job that you sign up for on a volunteer committee is just to go out there and, talk with people and, be honest. That's the key. And that's one of the really great things about the fire district process is that, the honesty there, people were, I saw things on social media about they're trying to hide the $1.50, $1.50 from $2 is a 50% increase. And, no, it was so transparent and the campaign that was run was so transparent and we dealt with that in a very honest fashion. And that's the only way to do it. And so I'm looking forward to that process and I hope to have some personal involvement in that. And finally, I want to add a final thing, and the reserves are going up. That is exciting. I remember, budget committee hearings when we were like pulling money out of reserves to fund one more police officer or something. Be able to staff not, like the police department, not fully, but adequately for given the amount of resources, and also build the reserve up. I think that is just absolutely terrific and really helps put the city on sound financial footing. So those are the things that stand out to me. We have a request for a photo op.
I am raising future engaged community members, so I'd love it if I've asked Susan to take a photo of us while we're sitting here, just so I can show. My husband said he would try to get on Zoom with my kids, but I don't know if it happened. So if you just stay where you are, you just act like you always do.
Well, wait, then I need one for the city newsletter then, too.
Please put your microphones down.
Should we pose for this, or?
Pound the gavel there, Jerry.
Budget books, can we pile up?
Safety officer.
I thought you were going to stand on the chair. I was like, don't
No,
do it.
don't do it. She's complicated.
My dentist told me not to put a pencil in my mouth.
You have to at least get the back of Mark's head. I mean, it's not a budget meeting without Mark.
Mark, there was a whisper of concern when you weren't here right when the meeting started yesterday, just so you know. Is Mark on vacation? Okay. Is Mark okay? True.
Dave, do you want to get in the picture?
Chair.
Yeah.
Before you, I get a sense you're getting ready to adjourn for the evening. Can I have a couple of minutes?
Yes, you may.
So I've joked in this body and in other settings about the number of budgets I've done, and I always joke that I don't count them. I know how many. I've worked on 40 municipal budgets over the course of my career. I have had the pleasure of working with dozens of elected and volunteer officials. I've had the pleasure of working with dozens of professional city and county staff members, and I've never worked with a collection as good, top to bottom and across the board, as the team we have assembled here. And I include the volunteers at this table, both elected and appointed. And I just want to tell you how much we appreciate your support. We appreciate you being diligent. We appreciate you being clear in your direction and your request to us. That helps us make a better community driven by these budgets and these policies. And I just think you have my ultimate respect and thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Let's check your calendars for, pardon?
Do we recess or adjourn?
I think we can do either, but I think we should adjourn until June 16. Keep your calendars clear. We'll get some clarity on the timing for that. We talked earlier, there will be notices published. That meeting will be probably relatively brief for most respects, I would think. With that, we stand adjourned.
Come with a soda. Sorry.